Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm scorching. Actually, the air smells of dust, frankincense, and something vaguely resembling roasted goat. You're lying on a bed that's stiffer than it looks, on a frame made from gold, but still, somehow squeaky, and your dreams are interrupted, not by an alarm clock, but by the booming voice of a priest chanting the sun awake. You're Pharaoh now, yes, the Pharaoh, and no, you don't get to hit snooze. You blink against the light, filtering through linen-draped windows. It's not even fully bright yet, and already the chamber is alive with whispers. Servants tiptoe around your bed, waving palm fans, rearranging your sandals, preparing trays. There's a soft clink as someone places copper vessels of scented water beside your couch. The scent is lotuses, but not the pretty kind. The kind that's meant to revitalize your essence, whatever that means. Don't. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. You in your own comfy bed, or halfway through a midnight snack. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly because pharaohs don't spring out of bed like startled interns. You stretch your arms, feeling the weight of dozens of protective amulets slung round your neck. A servant hurries forward with a damp cloth and dabs your face. It's a ritual. It's also kind of weirdly cold. The priests outside begin their daily recitation, praising your divine birth, which you've heard roughly 7,000 times. Son of Ra, they chant, the living Horus. You barely suppress a yawn. You are Horus technically, but Horus could probably use 5 more minutes, and yet, you rise. The palace is already humming. You're in Thebes or Memphis, depending on your dynasty, and the morning is thick with sounds. Donkeys braying, sandals slapping stone, merchants unloading honey jars, and priests smearing ash on their foreheads. The Nile glitters in the distance, and birds skim low, like scribes gliding across papyrus. It's beautiful, sure, but it's also responsibility in stereo. You step off your raised sleeping platform and onto cool stone. Immediately, two servants crouch and begin massaging oils into your feet. Yes, oils. You are, after all, a living god, and even your calluses must be divine. And just when you think you'll finally get a moment to breathe, a different priest bursts in. He bows so fast he almost headbutts the floor. My pharaoh, he says, his voice hushed but urgent. The sun's first beam has struck the temple pylon. This is big news. It means Ra approves of the day. Or, at least, the architect measured the angles right. Historians still argue whether these solar alignments were divine insight, or just excellent geometry. Either way, you nod with suitable gravitas. Meanwhile, your royal wig is being fluffed, your real hair shaved, because wigs are cleaner, easier to scent, and make lice easier to spot. And trust Millis love royalty. Breakfast is served, not in bed, but on a low jewel-inlaid table beside your favorite garden wall. You sit cross-legged like someone about to teach yoga, and the food is beige. There's barley bread, so tough, it could break your teeth if not for the honey dip. Some figs, a clay mug of fermented barley beer for breakfast. It's warm, sour, and oddly nutritious. Your stomach kind of hates you, but you're not alone. A court official recites the list of visitors who've requested an audience. Nobles, priests, that weird guy from Nubia who keeps gifting you animals that try to eat your servants As you chew, a palace cat slinks under your chair. She's sleek, sacred, and wearing her own tiny collar of lapis beads. She judges your posture with ancient disdain. Honestly, same. You look out over your courtyard, where stone columns rise like fossilized tree trunks, carved with spells and triumphs, many of them yours. The air is still cool, but not for long. The Egyptian sun is punctual, and it's already licking the horizon like it's heating up for a duel. Your eyelids feel heavy, painted in ground-up malachite and soot eyeliner, not for beauty, but to reduce sun glare and wearily ward off infection. Fringe fact: some physicians believed the green pigment connected you to the healing eye of Horus. Others just liked how fierce it made you look. There's a small procession forming just beyond the garden, priests in white linen, musicians with harps, and your royal bodyguard, half of whom are probably also spying on you. One holds your scepter, another your fly whisk, and one unfortunate soul is assigned your ceremonial bull-tail belt. That's exactly what it sounds like. You sigh. Another day of ruling, blessing crops, pretending to understand foreign taxes, and acting totally chill about the crocodile you dreamed about last night. As you rise, your knees pop. Divine creakiness perhaps. The palace shadows lengthen and narrow as the sun climbs. You're guided down colonnades lined with lotus carvings and golden doorways that haven't swung closed in decades. Every step echoes. People drop to the floor. As you pass, some press their foreheads to the tiles. Others sneak glances. You're supposed to ignore it, but sometimes you look, you wonder, are they afraid of you, or just afraid of not being seen bowing? Being Pharaoh means your entire life is a stagehand. The performance never ends, even when you're half asleep and still taste last night's garlic stew. And that incense you've been smelling all morning, it's not for you, it's for the gods. Technically, you're one of them, but let's be real. You still have to poop later, and the palace latrines are far from divine. You'd think being Pharaoh means eating like a king. Technically true, but not in the way you'd hope. Breakfast is over, and now you're making your way to the grand hall of offerings, where the food prep is even stranger. The head chef bows so deeply he might kiss the floor, then unveils your second meal of the day. More beer, more bread, and a hard-boiled goose egg that smells like it's been on vacation in the sun. Your stomach growls in protest, but that's not allowed. The royal belly must remain dignified. You dip the bread into honey and wonder for the 50th time why no one in the kitchen has heard of salt. Egyptian cuisine, at least for pharaohs, is oddly bland. There's barley flatbread, which is also used for offerings to the gods, dried dates, lentils, onions, and occasionally meat, though that's reserved for feasts and sacrifices. It's hard to feel mighty while chewing jerky with the texture of a sandal. The servants stand at a distance, hands folded, eyes respectfully cast downward. Except that one. You spot a young attendant sneak a peek at you while holding a jug of beer. He blushes and looks away. You smirk. It's the little victories. The buyer, by the way, isn't like your modern ice-cold IPA. It's warm. It's cloudy. It has bits. You drink it with a reed straw to avoid the floating gunk. Think smoothie, but if the blender was broken and the barley still had regrets, still, it's packed with calories, and honestly, it's safer than Nile water. The Nile, that shimmering blue god serpent slinking past your palace with a smug smile. It floods predictably most of the time and your whole kingdom survives because of it. Yet no one, not even you, controls it. Every meal, every loaf, every goose raised in the delta owes its life to that river. It makes you feel small sometimes. You hate that. After your modest breakfast, a priest appears. He's older than papyrus, and just as brittle. He rattles off the day's schedule in a monotone that's somehow both reverent and exhausted. There's an audience with tax collectors, a ceremony for RA, 2 petitions from farmers, and oh joya, formal inspection of the royal granaries. Your enthusiasm visibly wilts. You trudge toward the courtyard again, where several kneeling nobles are waiting with gifts, which really means bribes disguised as devotion. One presents you with a bronze mirror, another a cage of doves. The last awkwardly offers a pot of dates that may or may not contain a hidden love poem. Historians still argue whether pharaohs actually ate these offerings, or if most were passed on to the temple staff. Spoiler, you wouldn't touch half of this stuff without divine insurance and an herbal tea chaser. Then comes the parade of commoners, each more desperate than the last. They kneel, they sob, they fling dust in their hair. They beg you to fix their broken canals, to pardon their imprisoned sons, to bless their crops with your divine breath. You nod solemnly. You've practiced the compassionate God face in the mirror. It's like blue steel, but with eyeliner and more divine judgment. You issue decrees through your visual right hand, your filter, and the person who actually remembers what you said 10 minutes ago. He scribbles furiously on a scroll. You can't help but glance at it. The hieratic script looks like a flock of birds doing cartwheels. You've learned to read. Of course pharaohs are taught, but honestly, you're more of a vibe reader than a detail guy. While your stomach fights the barley beer, a page enters carrying a message from the temple of Khonsu. There's been a dream disturbance. Apparently, a priest saw your face inside a burning fig. You blink. Right. That probably means a ritual's about to be added to your schedule. Again, and now the food from earlier is fighting back. You excuse yourself and shuffle toward the private latrines, guarded by soldiers with very bored expressions. Inside, it's a bench with a hole and a pot of sand. Not exactly Versailles. You do your business with as much dignity as one can muster while swatting flies and praying no priest walks. In mid-process. Back in the courtyard, it's heating up. The sandstone reflects the sun like polished bone, and your eyelids feel extra heavy under layers of charcoal and copper pigments. You duck into the shade of a sycamore tree, sacred to Hatharand. Take a moment to enjoy the breeze from a fan, waved by a fan-bearer who's been doing this for hours without blinking. He's a champ. Then, something happens that jolts the whole court. A servant drops a tray. Clay shatters. Silence falls. Everyone looks at you. You pause. Then, you shrug. Let it go. Everyone exhales in relief. That's power. The ability to not be terrifying for 5 seconds. It's exhausting. Later, you walk past a wall mural still being painted. It shows you, of course, larger than life, smiting enemies and receiving angst from gods. You glance at the artist, who's sweating bullets. He flinches as your eyes meet. It's beautiful, you say. He nearly cries from relief. Don't you remember being a child in the palace, eating the same dull bread, sitting in the same sun, wondering what it would be like to grow up and rule? It felt magical then. Now, it's more like managing a particularly cursed bakery with crocodiles. A scribe hands you the weekly tribute report. You pretend to read it. Words like cattle, timber, and incense quotas leap out. But mostly you're just scanning for anything with the word surplus. If there's surplus, you're happy. If not, someone's probably going to be blamed. Usually the vizier. You wave it off and decide it's time for a short nap. But not in your bed. No. There's a divine rest chamber lined with cool alabaster and dried lavender where you can pretend to meditate while secretly catching a few blessed winks. You head there now, steps slow, mind already foggy with the heat, the barley, and the overwhelming weight of omnipotence. You awaken groggily in your so-called divine rest chamber, the scent of crushed lavender still clinging to your nose like a well-meaning but slightly overbearing ant. A servant stands nearby, holding a tray of fresh cosmetics. Yes, cosmetics, because being pharaoh means being presentable, even if you're just meeting with priests and people who already think you're half sunbeam. The tray contains familiar tools, a bone-handled applicator, a polished copper mirror, little jars of black, coal and green malachite, plus the unfortunate addition of something that smells like it was harvested from behind a crocodile on a hot day, because it was. The priestly healer who oversees your protective ointments has proudly informed you, more than once, that some of these mixtures include crocodile dung. Not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. Real, literal crocodile poop, dried, powdered, and supposedly magical. It's believed to protect your skin from the sun and evil spirits, possibly also from romantic encounters. You raise your eyebrows. As your eyes are lined with black coal paste, it's gritty, cold, and stings, slightly likely the lead content, but it does reduce glare and deter eye infections. Plus, it makes you look like you're always 5 seconds away from dropping. A mystical album that the coal goes on in slow, practiced sweeps. The servant's hands are steady. You wonder if he's more nervous about poking you in the eye or getting reassigned to dung duty if he messes up. Then, another potion is dabbed across your forehead. It smells of myrrh, garlic, and something sour. Fringe tidbit. Many of the ointments used by pharaohs included honey, lizard fat, and crushed insects. The idea was to preserve your skin and your aura, basically ancient Egyptian SPF. But with way more crunch. You glance at your reflection. Divine, tired, but divine. Before long, you're escorted into the solar courtyard for what should be a peaceful appearance. Instead, you find a group of high priests waiting, each wearing crisp white linen and expressions like storm clouds. Never a good sign. They bow low and begin chanting in unison. Your name, your titles, your long list of divine attributes, some of which you're pretty sure they made up this morning. Crusher of chaos, feather of Mat, the one who turns away the moon's curse. That last one feels unnecessarily dramatic, even for Egypt. You nod slowly. This is standard. But then they pull out the big incense burners, the really smoky ones. The air thickens instantly with clouds of kefir sweet, sticky incense made from wine, raisins, cinnamon, and about 12 other things no one remembers. It smells like your grandma's kitchen collided with a temple gift shop. The lead priest steps forward with a small clay jar. For divine clarity, he says, "You sigh. Here we go." Inside the jar is a paste used in ritual purification, applied to your chest, wrists, and occasionally your tongue. Historians still argue whether this paste had hallucinogenic properties, or was just incredibly spicy. All you know is it tastes like someone crushed old mint leaves in despair. You're guided to the center of the courtyard, where sunlight hits the flagstones just right, almost like someone planned it. The high priest raises his arms and begins the ritual of eye-opening. It's symbolic, of course. You're already awake, but the gods need reminders. A harpist plucks gentle chords nearby, accompanied by the rhythmic beat of hand drums. The entire court stands at attention. You stand still as they wave scepters, chant in circular patterns, and walk around you 3 times while sprinkling water and flower petals. You try not to sneeze. That would ruin the vibe. Your nose twitches. A sneeze would be very undivine. Thankfully, a butterfly lands on your wrist and distracts everyone just enough for the ritual to end gracefully. Applause breaks out. You wave solemnly. One priest wipes sweat from his bald head and mutters something about omens. You're told the next ceremony is optional. You smile politely and do not attend. Instead, you escape to the eastern balcony. From here, you can see the whole city. Houses, temple spires, traders with donkey carts, and children chasing dogs with tails like reeds. The Nile gleams beyond it all, curving like a silver snake under the morning sun. This moment of peace doesn't last. A servant rushes in with a sealed letter, an official scroll sent by a Nubian chieftain. You break the wax seal, expecting news of border trade. Instead, it's a poem, a long, romantic poem, accompanied by a painted image of yourself, riding a lion, shirtless. You blink. The servant avoids eye contact. Historians still debate whether ancient diplomacy was often this weirdly personal, or if your particular reign just attracted eccentric admirers. Either way, you now own royal fan mail, and you're not entirely sure how to respond. You're still chuckling when another priest appears. "Your Majesty," he says, bowing. "The astrologers have spotted a troubling alignment." "Oh great, here we go again." Apparently, Mars has drifted into the eye of Horus, and Venus is sulking in a shadow phase. You suppress an eye roll. Because of this, the priests want to cancel to harvest rituals and sacrifice a chicken instead. You nod, not because you agree, but because saying no means a week of bad vibes and scrolls filled with passive-aggressive celestial math. Before returning indoors, you dip your fingers into a pool of lotus water. It's cool, clear, and smells faintly of rain. For a moment, you feel something close to serenity. You're not just a pharaoh, you're a person. A tired, very eyelinered person who just wanted a nap and ended up with a crocodile dung facial. Your sandals squish as you walk back toward the inner sanctum. Yes, golden sandals, but still uncomfortable. They're encrusted with jewels and shaped for divine posture, which is a nice way of saying they hurt like heck. As you pass through the hyper-style hall, your eyes rest on the painted ceiling stars against a midnight blue sky. It's beautiful, silent, immense. You sigh again, and then a scribe walks into a pillar while staring at you. You don't laugh, you're divine, but you think about it. You're only halfway through the day, and already you feel like you've lived 3 different lifetimes, none of them particularly restful. As you make your way through the inner court of the palace, you're reminded that divine rulers, like yourself, don't get lunch breaks. They get omens and paperwork. Your vizier greets you with a scroll longer than your patience. He launches into updates with the unshakable optimism of someone who's never actually had to perform a fertility ritual in 43 degrees Celsius heat. There's a flood concern in the delta. Some priest in Heliopolis declared a goat sacred again, and the Libyan envoys have arrived bearing gifts, an absolutely terrible posture. You nod through it all, trying to focus, but your eyes are drifting to a fruit tray nearby. There's a pomegranate. You haven't had one in weeks. You reach for it. The vizier clears his throat. You slowly retract your hand, because what's next is worse than missing lunch meetings. You're escorted into the main council chamber, a stone room with towering pillars and suspiciously echoey acoustics. Every time someone says grain tax, it bounces off the walls like the world's most boring echo chamber. You sit on your throne, which is just slightly too upright to be comfortable, and listen as scribes drone on about crop yields, workforce, issues, and temple renovations. Halfway through, one of the tax overseers starts arguing with a regional governor about barley theft. It's the 5th time this week. You try to stay awake. You pinch your palm. You even discreetly poke yourself with your scepter. Still nodding off, a priest at your left recommends consulting the Book of the Heavenly Cow. Yes, that's real. It's an ancient guide full of stories, omens, and divine punishments, usually involving cows, stars, or cows who are stars. You try to feign interest. Historians still argue whether pharaohs actually took these books literally or just pretended to for the sake of tradition. Either way, you're stuck listening to a grown man read about celestial bovines. During a short break, the Libyan envoys are presented. They bow deeply and offer tribute: ostrich feathers, leopard skins, and a rather nervous-looking baboon in a painted crate. The baboon stares at you with a mix of fear and mild judgment. You're tempted to feel the same about this entire day. One of the envoys attempts a greeting in broken Egyptian. It's close. You smile politely and motion to your interpreter, who translates it into something far more flattering than what was actually said. You're used to that. Diplomacy is mostly theater anyway. The Libyans want grain, trade access, and a marriage alliance your daughter to one of their warlords. You raise an eyebrow. She's 11. The vizier quietly coughs and makes a note to delay the discussion. Good. After the meeting, you stand to stretch, feeling the ache in your lower back. Your throne is made of gilded wood and lion motifs, but comfort was apparently not divine policy. You make a mental note to request extra padding, then remember, your ancestors sat on stone slabs. Progress. As you return to your private quarters, you're intercepted by the high priest of Thoth, god of wisdom and writing. He carries a stack of papyri and a face like thunderclouds. There's been an eclipse, he says gravely. You blink, when, just before dawn, only visible in elephantine, ... and he leans in. This is a bad sign. Of course it is. He insists on a purification ceremony involving scented oils, white doves, and unfortunately a symbolic reenactment of your rebirth as the sun. This will involve you lying on a stone slab while the priests chant and shake. Sistra, those clattering musical rattles that make your teeth itch. You agree, but only if it's done after your real bath. Speaking of which, it's time to clean off the day's grime, and the bathhouse is already prepped. You walk down to a small chamber with a sunken basin. The water's been drawn from the Nile, then filtered through sand and lotus petals. It's still not exactly pure, but it's the best you'll get in 1300 BCE. Servants pour the water slowly over your shoulders, and you breathe out, finally relaxing. Until someone drops the soap again. You grit your teeth. There's a scrubbing ritual involving pumice stones and scented oils. It feels like being massaged with gravel and then glazed like a honey cake. You come out smooth, shiny, and slightly sore. But the worst part, the shampoo, a mixture of crushed lotus, myrrh, and fat, probably goat, hopefully not lizard. It smells like divinity and wet barn. A fringe tidbit: Egyptian royalty avoided perfumes directly on their skin. Instead, they wore wax cones of scented fat on their heads, which melted slowly over time. It sounds luxurious, until it starts sliding into your eyes. After drying off with linen towels embroidered with your cartouche, of course. You don fresh clothes, pleated linen robes, jewelry, and a new wig that somehow weighs more than a small cat. Gold rings are slipped onto your fingers, a broad-collared necklace clasps around your shoulders, and the royal crook and flail are handed to you not because you're using them, but because they complete the look. You feel regal and extremely sweaty. Just as you're about to head back into the court, another message arrives. The high priest of Pater is claiming your new obelisk is misaligned with the sacred meridian. You groan. That's the 3rd time this week someone's accused your monuments of being astrologically off. You know what's actually off. The workers who are supposed to finish your tomb stairs. You wave the messenger away, choosing instead to step outside for a moment of quiet. The palace rooftop is calm, bathed in sunlight and flanked by colossal statues of past pharaohs glaring heroically into the horizon. You lean against a column and watch as hawks circle high above. One lands on the parapet beside you. For a moment, you're just a man, a very tired, very perfumed man wearing gold eyeliner and a 12-pound necklace. You nod at the hawk. It does not nod back. The hawk eventually flies off, which feels symbolic, like even sacred animals have places to be. You, however, remain tethered to royal duties like a papyrus scroll tied in knots. No flying away for you, because next on your schedule, the Royal Menagerie. Yes, your very own collection of exotic animals. Sounds delightful, right? In theory, it's meant to demonstrate your power over nature and distant lands. In practice, it's an accidental zoo run by people who have never met a giraffe before. You descend the sandstone stairs to the outer garden, where the air shifts with a pungent mix of hay, dung, and panic. A scribe rushes up, clearly distressed. "Your Majesty," he pants, "the giraffe has kicked another servant." Of course it has. You make your way to the pens, flanked by guards and one very eager priest of Bastet, who insists the animals are sacred messengers. The lions pace in their enclosures, sleek, massive, and eyeing everyone like a buffet. A pair of ibises flap noisily near a shallow basin, while a sacred baboon sits on a stool, inexplicably holding a painted stick and judging everyone in sight. You pause at the elephant pen. The creature is enormous, swaying gently as a caretaker offers it palm leaves. You were gifted this beast by an Ethiopian king, who also sent you a basket of perfumes and a flute carved from ivory. Diplomacy is strange. One of the more fringe facts, ancient Egyptians probably didn't have domesticated elephants, which makes this entire interaction something of a historical mystery. Historians still argue whether the Egyptian court was really prepared to house such animals, or if they were simply shown off briefly and then traded, lost, or well eaten. But here's what you do know. That giraffe is a menace. It stands tall, graceful, twitchy, and covered in makeshift ropes, like someone tried to turn it into a boat. It eyes you with casual disdain before lifting one leg and almost kicking a guard again. You nod approvingly. That giraffe has spirit. "Move the pens," you command dryly. Farther from the kitchens, the head caretaker bows, visibly relieved. Probably because the last time the lion got loose, it ate a musician. No one misses the musician, but the lion got indigestion and temple drama ensued. You stroll onward through the garden. Statues of animal-headed gods line the paths: Anubis, Thoth, Bastetich, carved with divine precision and probably a little artistic liberty. The scent of acacia blossoms tries its best to mask the animal musk. You pause beside a shallow pool filled with sacred crocodiles. Yes, crocodiles. Raised in honor of Sobek, the crocodile god of fertility in the Nile. Some of them wear decorative gold caps over their snouts. You're not joking. One yawns lazily, flashing rows of teeth designed by nature to ruin your day. A priest offers to let you feed one. You decline. You've already seen too many fingers lost that way. And yet, there's a strange pride in watching this chaotic parade of beasts. Each animal was imported at great cost, across blistering deserts and stormy seas, offered by foreign rulers desperate to impress you or intimidate you, depending on how you squint at it. They are status symbols with teeth. You move along to the bird pavilion. Cranes, flamingos, and even a peacock strut along the garden walls. One of them pooped on a general last week. You called it a blessing from the gods. The general didn't agree. You reach a shaded area near the end of the garden, where two monkeys are engaged in what can only be described as interpretive chaos. They're wrestling over a papyrus scroll. The priest nearby sighs and informs you, "They're sacred scribes in training." You laugh out loud. The priest doesn't. As you return to the central court, a servant informs you there's a small performance prepared in your honor. Some music, a bit of dancing, maybe a recitation. You sit back on a low-cushioned throne and prepare to be mildly entertained. The performance begins with harp, music soft, rhythmic, and oddly hypnotic. Two girls in translucent linen robes dance in slow, spiraling steps, faces calm, movements precise. A young boy begins reciting poetry in Middle Egyptian, his voice trembling slightly. You catch every word. It's about you. Naturally, it compares your eyes to twin moons, your voice to the wind off the Nile, and your nose to the prow of a perfect bark. You try not to laugh at that last one. Someone clearly needs a refresher on metaphor, but still, it's nice. The music continues. A reed flute joins in, and for a moment, the sun catches the gold trim of your collar just right. You feel it. What the people see: a god, a protector, the center of the universe, draped in linen and myth. And then something crashes in the distance. Screams, shouts, commotion from the menagerie. A guard rushes in. "Your Majesty, the baboon is on the roof again." "Of course it is." You wave a hand, signaling someone else to deal with it. That baboon's been scaling the palace walls like a furry oracle for days now. Last time it made off with someone's wig. A brief thought flickers through your mind. How did it come to this? You, Pharaoh of the two lands, a living god on earth, and your afternoon is derailed by an overly dramatic monkey. You shake your head and stand. Enough animals for today. Back inside the cool halls of the palace, you walk through a corridor where the walls are carved with past pharaohs, some triumphant, some barely remembered, their names etched deep, but not always truthfully. You wonder how your own reign will be painted. Will the scribes tell of your justice, your glory, or will they remember the baboon? You chuckle softly, then straighten your back. Time for the next meeting. You return to the palace interior with the faint sound of monkey chaos fading behind you, replaced by the solemn shuffle of sandals and the faint clink of jewelry. Waiting inside is a scene you're all too familiar with: your extended royal family, assembled in full regalia, looking as though they've just come from a dramatic family dinner that somehow involved hieroglyphic insults and scented daggers. You take your seat on a modest throne, by Pharaoh standards, which still involves gold lion paws and a cushion filled with gusdown. And here they are, your brothers, your sisters, your half-siblings, cousins, second cousins, suspiciously distant nephews, and that one aunt who is always 2 words away from staging a rebellion. Welcome to the most dangerous court in Egypt, your own living room. The vizier steps in to announce a discussion on dynastic clarity, which is polite political speak for someone is once again trying to edge closer to the throne. You already know who is seated 2 cushions to your left, dressed in a tunic a little too fine for his station, fingers heavy with rings, and smiling like a cat who's convinced the mice have left the pantry door open. He opens his mouth to speak. You hold up a hand. No, you say calmly. The room freezes, then exhales. You've dealt with this before. Cousins who whisper in temple corridors, aunts who mysteriously discover ancient scrolls, naming them as rightful rulers, brothers who suddenly decide a flood is your fault and try to start a prophecy, war, fringe tidbit. Pharaohs often married within the family, not because they were romantically indecisive, but because they believed royal blood had to stay pure, which means your family tree isn't so much a tree as it is a very confused wreath. Your own wife is your half-sister, or cousin, or niece. Honestly, you lost track after the last royal festival. She sits at your side now, poised and unreadable. Her coal-lined eyes sweep the room like a panther scoping out weak prey. She hasn't spoken yet. That's either good or very bad. A priest from the temple of Isis begins speaking in delicate tones about the divine necessity of lineage, alignment. You pretend to listen. What he's really saying is, please marry someone else to consolidate a religious alliance. Again, you stifle a sigh. You've already had 3 weddings that doubled as state treaties and funerals. You're not eager to add another layer of drama to your dinner table. Historians still argue whether pharaohs were truly in love with their siblings, or if these were cold political moves designed to keep power from leaking outside the palace walls. You suspect it's both. Power, after all, makes strange bedfellows. A younger prince, he's 17, arrogant, and wearing a falcon pin he definitely hasn't earned, clears his throat and proposes a new festival in his honor. You resist the urge to throw your goblet. Instead, you smile gently. What a wonderful idea, you say, but why wait? Let's begin with a reenactment of Horus' slaying set. There's a pause. Everyone knows what that means. In ceremonial terms, Horus' slaying set is code for a trial by combat style ritual, where one person gets, metaphorically and sometimes literally, clobbered with a staff. The young prince turns pale. He bows hastily and mumbles something about reconsidering the scale of celebration. He exits. One down. You turn your gaze to your queen. She raises an eyebrow. You nod. She nods back. No words are spoken. None are needed. Because here's the thing. As pharaoh, you're not just a ruler, you're a chess master on a board where every piece is alive, armed, and slightly paranoid. Family isn't just family. It's succession, it's ritual, it's legacy wrapped in linen and intrigue. And sometimes, it's love. You remember being younger, watching your own father on this same throne. How he used to hold your hand tighter when certain uncles entered the room. How your mother whispered advice during ceremonies quietly enough not to challenge the priests, loudly enough for you to memorize every word. You're the one who survived. That means something. and surviving in this family, it's an extreme sport. The room settles into silence. The priests file out. The more ambitious cousins realize you're not dying this week and make polite exits. Soon, it's just you, your queen, and the breeze filtering through the carved windows. She speaks at last. They'll try again. You nod. They always do. Then she asks the question you dread. Should we arrange another marriage? You exhale slowly. To whom she shrugs. The Mitanni princess, or your niece. She's of age now. Of course she is. Your temples throb. You remember the last royal wedding. It took 3 days, 22 musicians, 4 sacrificial bulls, and a fire that nearly took out the northern gate. You're still finding peacock feathers in your sandals, but you also know the truth. Marriage isn't about romance. It's about sealing alliances, silencing threats, and on occasion maneuvering your own inner circle. It's exhausting. It's strategic. It's inevitable. You say nothing. Your queen nods. She understands. Eventually, the attendants return to refill your cups with cold lotus tea. It's bitter, floral, and allegedly calming. You drink deeply. You hope it works. Then you stand. There's a ceremony in the temple district tonight, and your presence is required. Not because the priests need your blessing, though they'll say they do, but because seeing you alive and standing keeps certain relatives from getting creative. You adjust your wig. You straighten your gold necklace. You glance once more at your queen, who's already scribbling a note for the head priest. Then you leave the room. The court bows as you pass, and somewhere behind you, a monkey shrieks in triumph from the rooftop. The palace is quieter now, though quiet in ancient Egypt still includes distant flute music, the occasional camel grumble, and at least one servant dropping a clay jug per hour. You move through the outer halls as dusk begins its slow crawl over the city, casting long shadows through lattice windows. It's almost time for the nightly offering to Ra, your divine dad, and you're expected to be radiant, or at least upright. 2 attendants flank you, each carrying part of your ceremonial wardrobe. Another fixes your collar, muttering something about alignment with celestial balance. You've heard this before. Apparently, if your necklace sits even slightly crooked, the balance of the cosmic order of truth and justice might tilt and doom the kingdom. Seems dramatic, but no one wants to test it. Once properly adorned in layered linen, gold bracelets, and enough perfume to stagger a hippo, you make your way through the temple walk. It's a long, columned corridor lined with carvings of gods and kings, mostly you, to be fair, engaged in activities like offering bread, smiting enemies, or calmly riding solar boats. The temple district is already buzzing. You can hear the priests from blocks away, chanting in a language older than your grandfather's bones. Smoke curls into the evening sky, rich with myrrh and cedar, and the occasional scent of, is that roast duck, probably an offering, or a priest's private snack? Hard to tell. As you approach the temple steps, everyone kneels, servants, guards, even visiting merchants clutching jars of wine. You nod once, and the great doors open with a sound like thunder swallowed in velvet. The inner sanctum is cool and dim, lit by flickering oil lamps that cast shadows in the shape of jackals, lotus flowers, and occasionally what looks like your cousin's profile. You ignore that one. This is the house of Ra, or technically, his earthly apartment. The statue of the sun god stands tall and golden at the back of the hall, eyes inlaid with lapis and a faint smile that looks suspiciously smug. A priest approaches, bowing so low his wig nearly falls off. "Great one," he whispers, "the sun has set. Shall we begin the rite?" You nod, and the ritual starts. Priests emerge like spirits, robes fluttering, instruments humming. One begins playing the sistrum, the jangly rattle that sounds like a tambourine being politely shaken by a librarian. Another lights incense at each cardinal point. A third begins reciting from the Book of Coming Forth by Day, invoking Ra's passage through the duat, the underworld, and you stand still as a statue, arms lifted, face blank, pretending you haven't done this exact sequence every evening since your coronation. The heat, the chanting, the pressure to look divine, even when your knees locking, it's all part of the job. Fringe detail. You don't just participate in this ritual, you are the ritual. The people believe your presence ensures Ra's safe journey through the night and his return at dawn. No pressure or anything. You step forward to pour water over a sacred stone basin, symbolizing the purification of Egypt itself. The water splashes softly, and the crowd of onlookers murmurs in awe. One priest accidentally hit. You pretend not to notice. The high priest, an older man with a voice like crushed papyrus, begins a hymn. Praise to thee, O living sun, whose rays strike the crown of the divine king. It goes on, and on. You count the cobras carved into the walls to stay awake. Finally, the moment arrives. You lift a golden loaf of barley bread and place it at Ra's feet. Symbolically, of course. Ra isn't known for his snacking habits. Then you raise your arms one final time, repeating the sacred phrase, I have fed the flame, I have opened the path, I am the light reborn. And just like that, the rite ends. The temple quiets, the music fades. You exhale, everyone waits, you turn, and walk away. That's their cue to breathe again. Outside, the air has cooled, and the stars have begun their silent procession across the velvet sky. The Milky Way, celestial Nile stretches overhead. You pause, gazing up. It's humbling, really. You're the center of this world, yet one dot in that sky. You're about to return to the palace when a priest intercepts you. My Pharaoh, he says breathlessly, there's been a sighting. You raise an eyebrow. A sighting? Yes, a divine omen, a jackal in the necropolis. You blink. Isn't that normal? It's a necropolis. He looks scandalized. Not this jackal. It walked in a circle 3 times. Then sat. You stare at him. He stares back. You sigh. We'll have the dream interpreter look into it. Speaking of dreams, you're reminded of the previous week, when another priest claimed to see your face in the clouds right before lightning struck the temple bakery. Half the court still argues whether it was divine wrath or just really bad wheat storage. Historians still debate how seriously pharaohs took omens. Some say they manipulated them for power. Others say they were manipulated by them. You suspect both are true. Either way, you're expected to respond, so you nod solemnly. A sign from Anubis, you declare. We'll make an offering at sunrise. The priest beams. The people will sleep better now, comforted by the illusion that someone, somewhere, understands the jackal's nightly schedule. Back at the palace, you finally shed the ceremonial gear. Your wig comes off with a sigh of relief. The gold collar is placed carefully into its box. You sit on the edge of your bed, rubbing your forehead. Servant appears with warm water, a fresh robe, and a tiny bowl of dates. You thank him softly. He looks surprised. Apparently, pharaohs don't often do that. You lie back, staring at the carved ceiling above stars, lotuses, the image of Nut, goddess of the sky, arching over the world. Somewhere in that painted firmament is your place. A throne in the stars, a seat in eternity. But tonight, he just wants some sleep that doesn't involve baboons, eclipses, or walking jackals. You close your eyes, and the palace exhales with you. Sleep doesn't last long, not when you're pharaoh. You're roused before dawn by the sound of drums, soft but insistent, echoing through the halls like thunder wearing silk slippers. A servant whispers near your ear, "My lord, it's time." The architects are waiting. You groan inwardly. You'd almost forgotten. Almost. Today is a pyramid day. You're ushered out of your chamber and into the cool pre-dawn air, where your chariot waits. It's a sleek contraption of wood and gold, with leather straps that chafe in all the wrong places. The horses, 2 glossy creatures imported from Syria, snort impatiently, as if they have somewhere better to be. The wheels creak as you roll out past the palace gates, escorted by soldiers, servants, and at least one scribe, who's already sweating ink onto his robes. The pyramid site looms in the distance like a stone mountain that someone dared to organize. You've seen it countless times, yet it never fails to intimidate, not just because it's massive, but because you're reminded that it's your tomb, your own eternal apartment, and you're overseeing its construction while still very much alive. And maybe, just maybe, slightly concerned it won't be done before you are . As you arrive, workers are already hauling limestone blocks under the glare of the rising sun. Dust swirls everywhere. Shouts rise, whips crack. Not from cruelty, at least. Not officially, but because managing a labor force of over 20,000 people requires very loud encouragement. Contrary to modern myths, these aren't slaves. They're seasonal laborers, many of them farmers working shifts during the flood season when their fields are underwater. They're fed, housed, even treated when injured. One even tried to ask you for a raise last week. You admired his boldness. Right before assigning him to brick counting duty, Your chief architect bows low and launches into a report. The west gallery has reached 12 cubits. The central ramp is stable, but the alignment of the capstone needs recalculating due to a deviation in the shadow length at the last solstice. You blink, you nod. You absolutely do not understand half of that, but it's important to look like you do. That's what pharaohs are for, looking mysteriously wise while everyone around them panics about structural integrity. Fringe tidbit: some historians believe the capstone, called the Ben Bonwas, often covered in electrum, a gold-silver alloy that reflected sunlight dramatically. Imagine your grave glowing like a disco ball every morning. Tasteful. You're led up a wooden ramp to a viewing platform where the full scope of the construction unfolds. There are sledges dragging stone, rows of workers shouting in rhythm, cranes powered by manpower and questionable optimism, and in the distance, a group of officials arguing about cartouches. You squint. Yep, they've carved your name backwards on an entire wall section. Again, you sigh. Fix it. The scribe beside you winces and scribbles notes faster. Then comes the inspection of the interior chambers. You descend a series of tight corridors, lit by oil lamps and smelling faintly of wet stone and ambition. The walls are smooth polished by countless hands and lined with early spells from the pyramid texts. These are your safeguards in the afterlife. Your elevator pitch to the gods. You pass through the passageway that will one day be sealed with granite plugs to deter grave robbers. Spoiler, it won't work. Historians still argue whether these traps and decoys were practical or just psychological warfare. Either way, you've ordered 3 false burial chambers just to be safe. One even has a fake body in it. That decoy mummy has better hair than you. Inside the main burial chamber, workers stand aside as you enter. It's vast and silent. Your future sarcophagus lies in the center, unfinished, cold, and waiting. You walk around it slowly, fingertips brushing the carved edge. You wonder how it'll feel to lie inside. You shake the thought. To morbid. Not before breakfast. Back outside. The sun is blazing now, and the worksite hums with that uniquely ancient blend of dust, sweat, and divine purpose. A boy offers you a sip of date beer. You decline. Too warm, too fizzy, too likely to make you belch in front of visiting officials. Instead, you step toward the edge of the site where a small shrine has been built. It's customary to give thanks to Peta, the god of craftsmen and architects. You offer a pinch of incense, murmur a blessing, and press your hand to the smooth stone. The workers notice. Some cheer softly, others bow their heads. You don't smile. Not exactly, but something in you eases your pharaoh. And that means being a builder, not just of monuments, but of legacies. You step back into your chariot, dust clinging to your robes. The return ride is slower. The horses are tired, so are you. Back at the palace, servants rush to wipe your feet with cloths soaked in palm wine. Another tries to brush limestone dust from your eyebrows without smudging your eyeliner. He fails. You glare. He bows so hard you think he might dislocate something. As you retreat into the inner garden, you reflect on the sheer scale of what you've just seen. A pyramid is more than a tomb. It's a message, a declaration, a very heavy memo to eternity. You wonder quietly, secretly, if the gods ever feel this tired. Later that afternoon, you find yourself summoned not to war, not to judgment, not even to a festival, but to something far stranger, a dream report. This is one of those lesser-known but deeply weird parts of being pharaoh. People expect you to rule the land, command the sun, bless the river, and also keep track of the symbolic meaning of someone dreaming about a talking ibis. You're guided to a shaded chamber deep in the palace complex, where the dream interpreter awaits. He's always there, like a human book of mysteries, who smells faintly of frankincense and moldy papyrus. His beard is forked in perfect symmetry, and his robes are so full of mystical symbols they look like a sleep-deprived artist attacked them with a reed brush. He bows deeply. "My pharaoh," he intones. "There have been signs." You settle onto a low cushioned seat. What kind of signs? He raises a scroll and begins to read. "Last night, the high priest of Ammon dreamt of a fish that sang, but only in reverse. A falcon dropped a crown into the Nile, and then a monkey played a harp made of snakes." You stare at him. He stares back. There's a long silence. "Was it ... an eclipse dream?" You ask, half hoping for something logical. "No," he replies. but we believe it indicates divine hesitation regarding grain storage. Of course it does. He hands you a clay tablet with hastily drawn images, a fish with open lips, a harp that's clearly just a basket, and yes, the monkey again, probably the same one that's still haunting the rooftop. Fringe tidbit. Dream interpretation in ancient Egypt wasn't a fringe novelty, it was institutional. Whole books existed, like the Ramesside Dream Book, listing what every dream meant. Dreaming of eating crocodile meat, good sign. Dreaming of your teeth falling out, bad. Dreaming of you in someone else's dream, that usually meant war, or a marriage proposal, or a plague. Historians still argue about how literally these dreams were taken, or if priests just used them to push their favorite policies. You hand back the tablet. So, you ask, what does it mean for me? The interpreter takes a deep breath. It suggests you must wear the blue crown for the next 3 days and avoid fish stew. Also, bless the Western storage vaults. You nod slowly. That last part is probably the real reason you're here. The priesthood wants those grain vaults protected with royal ritual divine pest control. Essentially, you agree, of course. What else can you do? Tell them dreams don't matter. That would cause more chaos than any plague. Just as you stand to leave, another priest bursts in, waving a different scroll. My Pharaoh, I bring word of your own dream from last night. You squint. I didn't report a dream. You murmured in your sleep, he says proudly. We recorded it. Oh, dear. He unrolls the scroll. Cabbages. Golden cabbages. The camel knows. He reads aloud. You freeze. The room is silent. A servant stifles a laugh and is promptly elbowed. The dream interpreter nods sagely. This is deeply significant. You resist the urge to cover your face. Within the hour, there's a new ritual planned to honor sacred produce. It's not the weirdest thing you've seen this week, but it's close. You retreat into your personal scriptorium, a room lined with scrolls, half-finished letters, and enough ink-stained papyri to choke a scribe. You open a record scroll and begin to write something. You rarely do yourself, but this dream stuff has you unnerved. You begin to jot. Day 1322 of rain, dreamt of talking vegetables, must reassess sleeping arrangements, and perhaps avoid date wine before bed. You pause. You smile a little. A knock comes. A servant enters. The serpent priest is here. You blink. Why? He wishes to verify the dream. Of course he does. The serpent priest is a minor temple official whose entire theological platform centers around snakes as divine intermediaries. You once allowed him to bless a garden. He's now determined to insert snakes into every ritual, dream, and foreign negotiation. You meet with him briefly. He speaks at length about sacred coils, dream spirals, and something called serpent memory. You nod through it. Then you gently suggest he go inspect the cellar for coiled wisdom. He leaves, visibly thrilled. You exhale. Finally, some quiet. You walk out into the palace gardens, your sandals crunching gently against gravel. The breeze is kind. The light is golden. You sit under a sycamore and watch as 2 children chase a cat through the herbs. The cat is winning. You think again about dreams your own, and the ones people project onto you. Pharaohs are supposed to be divine, wise, all-knowing. But most mornings, you wake up with sore joints and crumbs on your chest, just like everyone else. Still, you play the part, because it matters. Dreams matter not for what they are, maybe, but for what people believe they mean. You rise as the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows that flicker across the papyrus reeds, swaying in the water channel beside the garden. Somewhere in the palace, a servant is probably drawing a cartoon of you talking to cabbages. You let him dot. It's been a strange day, and it's only getting stranger. Your evening plans are abruptly cancelled, not because of another dream omen or a monkey rebellion, but because your left shoulder is on fire. Not literally, but the dull ache that began yesterday has turned into a pulsing throb, and every priest in the vicinity is now offering a diagnosis that sounds like it came from a scroll dipped in superstition. You're quickly surrounded by a semicircle of court physicians, each with a different solution and, of course, a different pouch of questionable goo. One suggests scorpion venom in microdoses. Another swears by goose fat mixed with crushed emerald. The third, the eldest, insists on boiled mouse water and lizard fat. Naturally, absolutely not. You mutter, which is brave, considering he's holding the lizard. But here's the truth. Being Pharaoh doesn't make you immune to pain. You may be a living god in name, but your back still knots like a laborer's, and your teeth ache like you chewed on too much sweet cake during last week's temple feast, which, to be fair, you did. The elder physician finally approaches with something marginally less horrifying, a poultice of honey, onion, and a few crushed herbs you recognize from your kitchen garden. You allow it. The goo is warm, sticky, and smells like an angry salad, but within minutes, the pain dulls to something tolerable. You thank him. He beams. You suspect he'll brag about this until the end of time. As the physicians file out, your queen enters. She eyes the honey-slathered cloth on your shoulder and raises an eyebrow. Divine strength, you say. She smirks. Divine stench, you laugh. Just a little dot. It's the kind of moment that makes the rest of the madness worth tolerating. Your queen doesn't fawn. She doesn't flatter. She sees through the wig, the gold, the chance, and the titles, and somehow still chooses to stay. But there's little time to bask in marital semi-sarcasm. A priest bursts in this one from the temple of Hecate, the god of magic and medicine, and he looks downright gleeful. That's never a good sign. My pharaoh, there is a remedy that must be applied before the moon rises. You brace yourself. It involves sleeping on a bed of straw, in the north-facing corner of a cedar chamber, with a protective amulet soaked in frog oil and goat milk. You stare at him. Also, he adds, you must refrain from saying your name for the next 7 hours. You blink. Leave, you say. He bows deeply and backs out of the room, muttering about symbolic silence. Fringe, tidbit. The ancient Egyptians had over 700 known magical spells and prescriptions for healing, ranging from wearing amulets carved with scarabs to rubbing dog saliva into wounds. Some of them actually had merit honey as antibacterial, others not. So much. Your own experience with Egyptian medicine has been equal parts effective and entertaining. You've been fed powdered ivory, smoked with herbs, leached near the temples, and at one point had a priest rub your feet while chanting the name of Ra backward. Historians still argue whether the priests truly believed in all of this, or if the rituals were more psychological, symbolic ways to show control, comfort, or cosmic alignment. You suspect it's both, and a bit of showmanship never hurts. Later, in your private study, a servant brings you something simple, a small cup of fig wine and a scroll sent by a healer from the border provinces. You unroll it. It's a list of herbs, no mystical incantations, no frog bones. Just garlic, thyme, and a note. This helps more than most priests will admit. You chuckle. You remember a moment, years ago, when you were just a boy with a fever, wrapped in linen sheets and watching your father's face blur. In candlelight, a healer came with poppy sap and sang a lullaby. You slept for 16 hours. He wasn't a priest, just a village man with soft hands and the confidence of someone who had nothing to prove. You never saw him again. You sipped the fig wine. It's sweet, earthy, and oddly comforting. The kind of drink that makes you forget for just a moment that you're supposed to be immortal. You wander back into your garden, shoulders still throbbing, but somehow less urgent now. The stars are out, sprinkled like shattered pearls across the velvet sky. You spot Orion's belt though in Egypt. He's Osiris, god of the afterlife. Fitting. You hear frogs in the distance, croaking near the palace pond. Their rhythm is hypnotic. You sit on a bench carved with jackals and lotuses, the stone cool against your legs. You think about all the cures, all the gods, all the scrolls, and how in the end, sometimes the best healing comes from just sitting under the stars and letting your body remember how to breathe. There's a rustle in the reeds. The monkey's back. He stares at you from the shadows. You stare back. He steals a date from your tray and vanishes into the night. You shake your head. Typical. The morning begins not with sunlight or music, but with the high-pitched wailing of a storm priest. You jolt awake, heart pounding, wondering for one disoriented moment if the palace is under siege. But no, it's just that priest again, barefoot, soaked, and shouting about thunder near the eastern fields. This can only mean one thing. The gods are angry, or, more likely, someone forgot to secure a shrine covering, and now a statue is slightly damp. You sit up, rubbing your temples as incense. Smoke snakes in through the open doors. The air smells of rain on dust, fresh papyrus, and worry. The storm priest babbles something about Seth, the god of chaos, waking early, and how this unexpected weather must be countered with immediate divine action. Bring me my breakfast. You mumble. But the rain, I said, ... bread and beer. The servant bows and vanishes. The rain is light, barely more than a mist, but in Egypt, even that is a cosmic event. You rarely get real weather, and when it does show up, it's either a blessing, a warning, or a logistical nightmare. Right now, it's all three. He walks slowly toward the balcony, still wrapped in linen sheets like a grumpy mummy, and peer out over the city. The sky is a pale grey, thick with the smell of wet brick. Below, people are scrambling to move wares, cover altars, and chase chickens that have entirely misunderstood the significance of water falling from the sky. Then comes the sound of horns, the long, low call of temple trumpets, signaling an emergency gathering. Great. You single quotes re-escorted to the grand court, where a row of priests, each more dramatic than the last, are waiting to brief you. My pharaoh, begins one. We believe this storm is the result of an unpleased deity, possibly a foreign god. Possibly, says another. It's the Syrian goddess of harvests, or ... a forgotten fish god. You raise a hand. Could it just be weather? They look horrified. Silence falls. Then someone coughs. A very bold scribe suggests consulting the scroll of sky warnings. You groan. That scroll is over 20 feet long, and has been misinterpreted so many times it once led to the accidental flooding of an entire orchard. Still, the priests rush off to retrieve it. You sigh and glance toward the outer courtyard, where ritual dancers are already assembling for an emergency storm pacifying performance. They're barefoot, painted in gold swirls, and if you're honest, really committing to the whole begging the heavens for mercy thing. Fringe tidbit. Pharaohs were often credited with controlling nature's sunlight, flood timing, even storms. Some believed if the pharaoh wept, it would rain. Others claimed your heartbeat set the rhythm for the Nile. Either way, the weather wasn't just climate, it was you. So, obviously, this storm is your fault. You watch as the high priest of Horus produces a falcon feather and holds it up to the wind, muttering words you're fairly certain he made up just now. The priest of Set, who rarely gets the spotlight, finally steps forward. My pharaoh, he says, clearly thrilled. This is obviously the work of Set. It is chaos incarnate. You must banish it personally. You raise an eyebrow. With what? Harsh language. He blinks. With a bronze dagger and a fish. You do not laugh. You do not laugh. The ritual begins shortly after. You're robed in a simple white linen tunic signifying humility before the gods, and handed a small ceremonial dagger, which has never been used on anything more dangerous than a pomegranate. In your other hand, a Nile perch, dead and, unfortunately, smelly. You're guided to a rooftop altar where incense burns like panic itself. The priests chant. The storm priest howls a few verses in an undecipherable dialect, and then ... You stab the air with the dagger. Then you slap the fish against a clay tablet painted with chaotic symbols that the rain stops. Everyone gasps. You blink at the sky. Did that actually work? Historians still argue whether these rituals truly affected weather, or if priests just got really good at timing their ceremonies. Honestly, you don't care. The rain stopped. The fish slap was weirdly satisfying. You're calling it a win. The priests declared the ritual a triumph. The storm has been driven into the underworld, and you, once again, have restored divine order. People cheer. A servant faints. A scribe writes way too many flourishes on the event record. You're escorted back inside like a hero returning from war, only slightly more damp and holding a mildly defeated fish. You pass your queen in the hallway. She eyes the fish. Set tremble before you. She asks dryly. Absolutely, you reply. Later, in your bath chamber, you sit submerged in warm, lotus-scented water while a servant carefully washes the fish scales off your hands. You think about what just happened, about the ceremony, the cheers, the coincidence, or was it? You look at your own reflection in the still water, the coal smudged under your eyes, the faint lines on your forehead, the scar near your collarbone from that hunting accident no one ever talks about. You look less like a god now, more like a man, and yet, outside, thunder rumbles again. You raise an eyebrow. You whisper, "Don't make me get the fish." There's a rumor fluttering through the palace, like a loose scrap of papyrus on the wind. A scribe has called you a donkey. Not to your face. Of course, no one with a fondness for breathing would ever do that. But in ink hidden in the margins of an old tax record scroll, scrawled sideways, nearly invisible unless you just happen to be looking for insult-based hieroglyphs between barley quotas. You weren't, but someone else was. Your Majesty, your vizier says carefully, holding the offending scroll at arm's length. It's definitely a donkey. You squint at the small image. It is a donkey, wearing a crown. Next to it, someone's written a snide comment involving bread, mud, and poor judgment in irrigation projects. You sigh. This is not the first time a scribe has gotten bold with his ink. The last one doodled your wig falling off during a speech. Another drew you with comically large nostrils. That one ended up scrubbing tomb walls for 6 months. But this feels personal. You're Pharaoh, son of Ra, living Horus you are, the heart of Mat, the pulse of divine order, and someone in your archives thinks you have donkey energy. The vizier clears his throat. Shall I have the scribe? Questioned. You pause. Because honestly, you kind of admire the guts it took. Not yet, you say. Let me see the rest of the scroll. You sit back as the vizier lays it out. It's a dry read. Tax tallies, grain storage records, temple allocations, and one very passive-aggressive footnote about barley ratios. Somewhere in the midst of all this is the doodle. Small, quiet, disrespectful, hilarious. You start laughing. The vizier looks alarmed. Shall I destroy it? No, you say. Keep it. File it with the Royal Archive. Title it, The Scribe's Honest Day. He hesitates. You're not angry. You wave a hand. I've been mistaken for a god, a bird, a fish, and once, a loaf of bread in someone's dream. Donkey isn't the worst. Fringe fact. Ancient Egyptian scribes were notoriously opinionated. Some left behind satirical writings poking fun at Pharaoh's priests, and bureaucrats, always anonymously, of course. These weren't published texts but hidden bits, private margins, graffiti on limestone blocks. Historians find them tucked away like whispered secrets. It seems even in the land of divine rulers, sarcasm finds a way. Still, you decide to visit the scriptorium that afternoon. Not to punish, just to remind. You walk in unannounced, the door creaking like a scolded goose. Inside, a dozen scribes freeze, each one holding a stylus like it's suddenly made of scorpions. They rise, bows, silence. You look around slowly. Lovely handwriting. You say, no one breathes. You walk past the central desk and stop beside one particularly nervous young man. His palms are ink-stained, his eyes darting like a trapped ibis. You smile. Anything you'd like to confess? He swallows hard. I just record what I'm told, Your Majesty. Of course you do. You leave them stewing in their own panic and return to your private chambers, chuckling softly. Fear can be a useful spice, not too much, just a pinch. That evening, a peace offering arrives, a short story written anonymously, but obviously meant for your eyes. It's a tale about a humble donkey who, after a journey through the desert, is revealed to be Ra in disguise. You laugh so hard you spill wine on your linen tunic. Later that night, you dream of being a donkey. You're wearing your gold collar. You're walking through a field of talking lotus flowers. A crocodile bows to you. A monkey tosses you a fig. The dream is oddly flattering, until you wake up and discover you've kicked all your sheets onto the floor. Historians still argue whether pharaohs genuinely believed dreams were direct messages from the gods or just subconscious echoes of power and paranoia. Either way, you make a mental note. Ask dream interpreter what donkeys represent. The next morning, you pass the scriptorium again. A new sign hangs above the doorway. All messages reviewed twice. No animals in margins. You smile, not because you banned donkey jokes, but because they're still thinking about you. And that's power too. You awaken to a rustling sound, rhythmic and soft, like someone sweeping papyrus leaves. But it's not a broom. It's your royal pet cobra. Yes, that's a sentence you didn't expect to say. But here we are. The serpent, long and glistening, is coiled neatly on a sunlit cushion beside your bed. Its scales shimmer like obsidian dipped in gold, and its tongue flickers with a calmness that's somehow more threatening than hissing. It watches you with slit-pupiled eyes that know too much. You sigh. Again, a servant rushes in, bowing low. My pharaoh, the guardian has not left your chambers since the night of the storm. It senses unrest in the spirit winds. Of course, it does. You sit up slowly. The cobra doesn't flinch. It seems to be making a point, maybe, that it's more committed to your safety than your guards. Or maybe it's just cold and likes your sheets. Either way, this is normal. Your pet cobra. Officially, as Sekhmet's breath is considered both sacred and symbolic, it represents Wadjet, the protective goddess of Lower Egypt, and appears on the golden uraeus you wear on your crown. Having the real thing slither through your bedroom is extra, but traditional. Fringe tidbit. Royal cobras were actually kept in palaces, sometimes allowed to roam specific chambers. They weren't just pets, they were seen as active magical protectors, defenders against evil spirits, curses, and assassins who couldn't handle venom. The cobra shifts slightly, gliding over to the corner where your sandals wait. You take that as your cue to not wear sandals today. Instead, you slide into your softest linen house robe and motion for your attendants. One begins brushing your wig, another prepares your morning oil massage, a third is fanning your face with peacock feathers. Even though the air is already cool, as you sit there being oiled and powdered, you glance occasionally at the snake. It's now curled in a perfect spiral, its head resting atop its body like it owns the palace. It probably does. The vizier arrives, speaking slowly, carefully, not because you're groggy, but because he doesn't want to spook the cobra. Smart man, there are reports from the temple quarter, he says. 3 omens were spotted, 2 were favorable. 1 was ... unclear. You raise an eyebrow. Unclear how? He clears his throat. A statue of Bastet fell and landed upright. Some say it means protection. Others say it means rebellion. There's also a fish-shaped cloud hovering over the grain silos. You blink. Why is it always fish? He shrugs. Symbolism is a slippery thing, my pharaoh. You resist the urge to wave him away and instead rise, allowing your attendants to dress you in your ceremonial tunic. Today's version is simpler, just gold-threaded linen, a turquoise collar, and a single ring engraved with your CARTOUCHE. As you walk toward the outer chamber, Sekhmet's breath follows, gliding silently across the polished stone floor. Like a warning no one dares ignore. You enter the Hall of Divine Warding. It's a modest name for a room that contains enough magical artifact to make any modern museum weep. Shelves of scrolls, jars of enchanted oils, ivory wands carved with protective spells, and a basket full of scarabs, some living, some definitely not. This is where the priests come when someone sends you a curse, which happens more than you'd like. Your high priest of Heka is already there, hunched over a fragment of linen etched in red ochre. Your Majesty, he says, not looking up. Another binding spell. Someone tried to wither your voice, based on the inkstroke, likely from someone left-handed, possibly a minor noble, or a disappointed poet. You nod. What's the remedy? He lifts a small wax figurine. We melt their spell with this, then recite the verse, and he gestures to a jug. Drink lion's milk infused with cinnamon. You pause. Is that real milk? From a real lion? He hesitates. From a lion-shaped vessel? Yes. You narrow your eyes. I'll take the risk. The ceremony is performed quickly. A brazier is lit. The wax effigy dropped into the flames, and you sip a spicy liquid that tastes like regret and fire. The priest chants, and at one point, the cobra hisses in approval. That part wasn't planned. Everyone bows a little deeper. You're told the curse is broken. Your voice is safe. You try saying bread. It comes out fine. You try fish, still fine. You attempt monkey. Too soon. A guard stifles a snort. You glance toward Sekhmet's breath. It's staring at the guard. He stops snorting. Good. Later in the day, you receive word that an envoy from Kush has arrived with tribute. Among the offerings, gold dust, ebony, incense sand, a baby crocodile. It's dressed in tiny linen wrappings and wearing a necklace. You don't react. You've seen worse. You return to your chambers, where the cobra has now claimed your chair. You sit on a stool. As you sip from a chilled cup of pomegranate juice. You think about the line between power and performance. People believe you're untouchable, but they still send curses. They still scroll insults. They still whisper omens like wind through a cracked wall. But then you glance at the cobra.com/watchful, and you realize, sometimes it's not about being invincible. Sometimes it's about being just venomous enough to make people think twice. The day grows hotter, and you are starting to regret the golden sandals. At first glance, they seemed like the pinnacle of luxury, crafted from soft gazelle hide, gilded with delicate overlays of hammered gold. lined with linen, and embossed with the royal cartouche, so that every step you take literally leaves your name in the dust. Regal, right? Until you've worn them for more than 6 minutes. Your toes are sweating, your heels are slipping. There's something suspiciously sharp on the inner edge of the left sandal that may, in fact, be your own dignity grinding into blisters. You shift your weight. You wince. The high priest beside you pauses mid-prayer and looks concerned. Divine One, are you in discomfort? You wave him off with as much authority as a limping god can muster. The sun is strong today, which is true, but also, your feet are staging a quiet revolt. You continue your procession anyway, because today is one of those walk through the temple and be adored days. You're making an appearance at the temple of Hathor, goddess of love, beauty, music, and if the crowd outside is any indication, very loud tambourines. As you step into the colonnade, the music swells, the crowd cheers. Flower petals rain down from above, most of them hitting your wig. You nod serenely, like someone who hasn't just noticed a petal stuck between their upper lip and nose. You reach the temple dais and climb the stairs one careful, painful step at a time. A gust of wind blows your linen robe dramatically. That part's perfect, almost enough to make up for the burning sensation in your pinky toe. You take your place beside the sacred statue. Priests chant, musicians play, dancers spin and clap. One slightly too enthusiastic singer nearly knocks over a pot of lotus oil and spends the rest of the ceremony looking like he's swallowed a bee. And through it all you stand, immobile, serene, a living god with increasingly angry feet. Fringed tidbit, golden sandals were often placed on the feet of pharaohs during funerary rituals and statues, but they were also worn in life for ceremonial events. Symbolically, they were meant to protect you from impure ground and remind everyone watching that you were above ordinary duststands sometimes, above common sense. Your feet aren't the only thing suffering. You notice that your divine posture has started to slouch slightly. One of the guards coughs nervously. A scribe makes a subtle adjustment to his sketch. You straighten again, painfully. You finally sit on a throne too small for anyone wearing ceremonial armor and a backboard, more suited for punishment than comfort. The priestess approaches with the Hathoric wine, a symbol of joy, fertility, and sacred indulgence. You take a sip. It's aggressively fermented. You blink. The priestess beams. You force a smile. Delicious, you say hoarsely. Then come the petitions. A dozen or so worshippers, chosen by the priests. Each step forward with prayers, concerns, and what they believe are urgent matters of divine interest. One wants you to bless her goat. Another complains that her neighbor's garden wall is casting too much shade on her onions. A third presents you with a love poem written in the shape of a scarab. You try to nod wisely at each one, but somewhere around the 8th petitioner, your left foot gives up entirely and starts cramping. You shift in your chair. The priest notices. Shall we pause the ceremony, Great One? No, you say through gritted teeth. Let the people speak, which is code for, please let this end before I lose circulation to my toes. Eventually, the high priestess concludes the rites by wafting sacred perfume around you in slow spirals. It smells like honey, lilies, and just a hint of actual divinity. You close your eyes and breathe it in. Your feet still hurt, but for a moment, the world blurs into something soft and shimmering. The crowd disperses. The tambourines fade. You limp gracefully back to your palanquin. Inside, your queen is waiting. You were radiant, she says, though I noticed your divine right heel twitching halfway through the second prayer. You shoot her a look. The sandal is cursed. She nods solemnly. Shall we throw it in the Nile? You consider it. Instead, you remove both sandals and place them on the floor. Your feet sigh in gratitude. A servant arrives with cool water and a bowl of ointment made from aloe, frankincense, and what smells suspiciously like old mint. You know, your queen muses, you could go barefoot more often. It would terrify the court. You smile. Not a bad idea. That evening, as you recline in your garden chair with your sore feet, soaking in a lotus-filled basin, you look up at the stars and wonder why the gods invented pain for people who are supposed to float above it. You resolve, quietly, to commission a new pair of ceremonial sandals, still golden, still divine, but maybe with padding. You're just beginning to enjoy your evening quiet soak, a plate of chilled figs, the gentle murmur of frogs from the garden pond. When your vizier appears with the anxious look of a man carrying bad news, disguised as official parchment, he clears his throat. "My pharaoh, we have received correspondence." The scroll in his hands. It's sealed in blue wax, marked with the sigil of a kingdom from far to the north. Diplomatic messages always look important. They rarely are. You break the seal. Inside is a letter from the ruler of a neighboring state. It starts cordially in honorifics, obligatory flattery about your divine lineage. But then, buried halfway through the stylized prose, is the real message. He's cursed you, politely. He sent a letter filled with well wishes, subtle metaphors, and a very specific curse encoded in poetic form, complete with the line wishing that the roots of your royal hairline recede with the tide. You pause. Is this a joke? Your vizier squints. I believe it's metaphorical slander. You sigh, because here's the thing. In ancient diplomacy, curses weren't always shouted by wild-eyed mystics under the moonlight. Sometimes they were wrapped in poetry and dipped in honey spells disguised as compliments, woven into greetings and goodbyes like little daggers tucked under velvet dot. And make no mistake, words have power. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Egyptian officials frequently encountered curse letters, correspondences laced with intentional misphrasing, symbolism, or numerology meant to invoke divine misfortune. Some included drawings. Others relied on strategic ink, color, or sentence structure to disrupt a pharaoh's health, luck, or lineage. It was passive aggression, but with cosmic consequences. You hand the scroll to your priest of magic, who reads it once, then twice. Yes, he nods. That bit about the drifting reeds of your name implies erasure. This is an erasure curse, possibly baldness, too. You glance at your reflection in the water basin. Still magnificent, but your temples feel suspiciously breezy. What's the remedy, you ask? He smiles grimly. We must retaliate, with a counterletter, and naturally, a countercurse. Great. He begins preparing materials, special ink, mixed with saffron, powdered hematite, and a few drops of your personal bathwater. Don't ask. A blank scroll is laid out, and he begins composing what can only be described as an extremely polite threat. You supervise. We'll start by praising their gods, he says. Then we'll pray that their harvest doesn't accidentally collapse. You nod. And perhaps bless their royal scribe, he adds, so that his ink never dries. Except when it matters. You smirk. Half an hour later, the finished product is rolled, sealed, and handed to a royal courier with very clear instructions to ride like a curse is chasing him. Then you turn back to your evening. But the damage is done. Your mind is unsettled. The idea of someone cursing your name from across the desert, it sticks to your thoughts like sand on wet feet. Even if it's ineffective, even if your magic is stronger, even if you're pharaoh, it lingers. You order a purification ritual. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet one. A priest sprinkles natron salts at the corners of your chamber. Lotus incense is lit. A sacred cat is brought in to walk counterclockwise 3 times. It only does 2 before curling up and falling asleep. That's probably fine. You drink an herbal tonic made from mint, garlic, and old bitterness. It tastes like betrayal. The priest mutters protection spells near your ear. May your name be a spear, he says softly. May your enemies chew dust when they speak it. You nod, eyes half-lidded. You think about names, about the dozens you carry. Each pharaoh has 5 royal names: Horus name, throne name, birth name, etc. And each is carved into walls, painted in tombs, etched into rings and statues. They're meant to be immortal. They are. And now, someone wishes one of them, gone. You walk to your private shrine. It's small, personal. Inside is a simple statue of Matha, goddess of truth and cosmic order. A feather rests at her feet. You kneel, not to beg. To balance. Keep my name, you whisper, where their curses cannot reach. There's no thunder, no divine sign, just a breeze through the curtains. And then, peace. You rise. You return to your chambers. You rewrap your wig, and for good measure, you order 3 new inscriptions carved into the palace pillars before dawn, each with your throne name written in bold, unmistakable glyphs. If someone wants to erase you, they'll have to start there. Bathing, contrary to what poets and temple artists might imply, is rarely an act of decadent luxury for a pharaoh. It is, more often than not, a gritty negotiation with nature. Case in point, Today's bath features Nile water, not the crystal blue fantasy version from temple paintings, but actual Nile water, gritty, murky, and smelling vaguely of catfish. You try not to think about what's upstream, or who. You sit on a carved stone stool in your private bath chamber, while attendants pour jars of warmed river water over your shoulders. Lotus petals float on the surface, which is aesthetically pleasing but does very little to cover the scent. A servant fans incense in one corner, another stands ready with scented oil, a third mutters softly while holding a papyrus scroll about the correct chants for royal purification. You close your eyes and endure, because the truth is, despite your status, your bathing options are not so far removed from that of a particularly lucky merchant. You get warm water, yes, but filtered only through sand and woven reeds. You get linen towels, soft and hand-stitched, but the actual cleaning involves scrubbing with natron, a kind of ancient soap that's equal parts salt and sting. And it stings everywhere. Fringe tidbit. While Cleopatra gets all the credit for bathing in milk, most Egyptian royalty bathed in water straight from the Nile. Milk baths were rare, reserved for sacred rituals or medicinal treatment, and generally unpleasant after 20 minutes. In the heat, you've tried it once. You came out smelling like curdled destiny. A priest enters the chamber, balancing a bronze tray of divine remedies. There's a paste made from crushed acacia, goose fat, and something that looks disturbingly like mashed beetles. He insists it's for exfoliation. You insist it stays far away from your face. I'm clean enough, you mutter. The priest bows. Cleanliness is next to divinity, my pharaoh. You raise an eyebrow. I am divinity. He nods nervously and backs away, nearly tripping over a folded towel. You're rinsed one final time. The water drips down your back in thin rivulets, pooling around your feet. A fresh robe is brought, white, pleated, slightly stiff with starch. As they help you dress, you glance at your reflection in a polished copper mirror. Your kohl is gone, your face bare, your eyes tired but sharp. You look real, which is rare. You step out into your chamber, skin still damp. When your queen walks in, she halts, then smiles. You smell like courage and catfish. You've grown. It's the Nile. Special. She walks over and gently touches your shoulder. Her fingertips are cool. You need rest. Can't. You sit on the edge of a chaise. There's an envoy arriving from Crete. They bring a gift, probably another animal. You like the animals. They keep trying to kill the guards. She shrugs. They're good judges of character. You chuckle and wave her away. Go oversee the scribes before they draw me naked again. She laughs and vanishes through the curtains. Moments later, a page arrives with a report. The envoy is already waiting. And yes, he has brought a gift. A sea swan, apparently. You sigh. You change into your meeting robes, light, linen trimmed, with cobalt blue glass beads, meant to suggest peace and diplomacy. A gold necklace is placed around your neck, bearing the symbol of Jed's stability, which is funny, because your stomach is already grumbling. You enter the reception chamber to find a man in a flared tunic and wild hair bowing deeply. Behind him, a massive cage covered in woven reed mats. My great king of light. He says in broken Egyptian, we bring feathered wonder, only one of kind, walks on water. You raise an eyebrow. The mats are pulled aside, revealing what appears to be a very large goose, not a swan, not quite a pelican. Something in dash between it, honks dramatically, and immediately defecates on the floor. The entire court goes still. You nod, very slowly. Marvelous, you say. Historians still debate the accuracy of foreign tributes in Egyptian records. Some say the pharaohs received elephants, apes, giraffes, and exotic birds in well-documented diplomatic exchanges. Others believe some of these gifts were exaggerated or fabricated entirely to make you look more important to your neighbors. You suspect the goose is real. And very vengeful. You offer the envoy a cup of date wine and signal the guards to move the bird before it gets any more ideas. It hisses at one of them. He jumps. You pretend not to see it. Back in your chamber, after the laughter dies down, you finally sit to eat. Your meal is simple. Today, barley, bread, figs, roasted fish, and pickled radish. It's not royal, but it's real. And after the goose, you need something grounding. The queen joins you, picking at a grape. Did it attack anyone? Not yet, you say, chewing slowly. But I think it's planning something. Should I assign it a priest? No, that's how the monkey started. She snorts and leaves you in peace. You sit in silence, chewing, watching the last streaks of sun fade from the sandstone walls. You think again of water, how much of your life it defines. The Nile, the bath, the sweat under your wig, even your curses, your rituals, your blessings. So many begin with water, but still, you long for a true bath. Not in the Nile, not in milk, but maybe somewhere quiet, clean. Still, you'll never get it, but the idea lingers, like soap in a scar. You hold the cat's tiny linen sarcophagus in your hands, and you feel, small dot, it's barely the length of your forearm, wrapped in intricate layers of soft cloth, painted with gold and lapis details. Its face, shaped with careful strokes too, resembled the one creature that never bowed to you in life. Your cat, Mew, has died, and her funeral is more extravagant than some minor nobles will ever know. You walk slowly through the temple of Bas, beneath towering columns painted with leaping felines, past murals of cats slaying serpents, licking sacred milk, and judging mankind with the kind of indifferent stare that only cats can truly master. At your side, the priests chant softly. The chief embalmer holds a tray of unguents, resins, oils, and sacred herbs, and a small bronze comb. One servant holds your cat's favorite toy, a carved wooden mouse that rattles faintly with seeds inside. You enter the sanctuary. Here, incense swirls like mist. Light flickers from oil lamps set in niches. Statues of Bastet watch you, some as playful kittens, others with fierce lioness eyes. And in the center, a stone pedestal where you place Mew, gently, reverently, as if she's only sleeping. The priest begins the rite. He anoints the wrappings with oil and utters words in Old Egyptian, the kind even you barely understand anymore. Phrases about the field of reeds, about joy in hunting birds, and eternal naps in the sun. You close your eyes. Fringe tidbit. Egyptians didn't just love their pets, they revered them. Cats were sacred, protectors against evil, symbols of grace and cunning. Killing a cataven accidentally was punishable by death. Mummified cats were buried with offerings, prayers, and often next to their owners. Some pharaohs even had their cats entombed in miniature pyramids. You feel the heat of the incense against your face, the steady drumbeat of the priest's hand against a sistrum, the shimmer of mourning that has nothing to do with politics or power. For a moment, you're not pharaoh, you're just someone who lost a friend. The ceremony ends with a mewling chant from two priestesses dressed in feline masks. They dance slowly in a circle, shaking small bronze bells that jingled like wind through temple reeds. One of them pauses beside you, pressing a posh-shaped amulet into your palm. For protection, she says, voice muffled through the mask. From unseen enemies. You nod, your throat tight. Back at the palace, servants have prepared a memorial feast, not for humans, for cats. Bowls of milk, roasted fish, little piles of goose liver. Dozens of temple cats, sleek, shadowy, and utterly spoiled, had been invited. They wander in, tails high, as if they owned the place. Honestly, they kind of do. You sit on a raised platform and watch as they eat. One hops into your lap without asking. You let it stay. Later, you order a statue commissioned. Not just any statue, bronze of Mew, sitting tall, one paw lifted, ears perked. You choose the artist yourself. You watch him sketch. Not too noble, you say. She was smug, not saintly. He nods. Understood. Divine one. The statue will go in your garden, near the basin where she liked to drink. And yes, you'll leave offerings, not out of superstition, not out of respect. That evening, you pass your scribes in the hall. They're whispering about a story, that the pharaoh's cat has ascended to the stars, and now watches over the kingdom as a celestial guardian. You don't correct them. Let the people believe it. Sometimes, belief is kinder than truth. You sit, alone in your garden, the breeze brushing over your arms. Somewhere nearby, a real cat yowls. You close your eyes. You remember how she used to ignore your commands, sleep on your state documents, bat at your royal seals like they were nothing more than shiny beetles. You smile. She was the only one in your entire kingdom who never bowed, and somehow, that made her sacred. It's just past midnight when the trumpets sound, not the grand ones. Not the A-foreign-kingdom arrives-with-gold-andelephants kind. These are smaller, bone-deep, eerie. They're only blown during ritual simulations, the ones where you pretend to die. Yesternight is one of those nights. Your body is scrubbed clean with natron. Your eyebrows are plucked. Your breath is tested with clove and mint. You're dressed in white linen robes with gold trim so fine they seem woven from candlelight. You wear no wig, no crown. Tonight, you are not the Pharaoh. Tonight, you are the dead. You step barefoot into the inner sanctuary of the temple of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The stone is cold beneath your feet. The air is thick with smoke and silence. The priests stand waiting, face painted, eyes rimmed in obsidian kohl, holding staffs carved with lotus and papyrus. The lead priest steps forward. The sun has set, but shall rise again, he intones, and so must you. You nod, then lie down in a stone chamber, your coffin for the night. You stare upward at a ceiling painted with Nut, the goddess of the sky, her body arched above in shimmering blue. Stars have been embedded in her limbs. The stone around you echoes with the soft chants of resurrection spells. Pharaoh dies, they whisper, so Pharaoh may rise. It's not a real death, of course, you know that. Everyone knows that, but still, something happens when you lie perfectly still, wrapped in sacred linen, listening to men chant your demise. You feel the shift. Fringe tidbit. These death and rebirth rituals were not mere theater. They were considered essential maintenance of cosmic balance. Pharaohs underwent symbolic death ceremonies to mirror the sun god Ra's nightly journey through the Duatha underworld. By dying, you restored the world. Every sunrise was your personal encore. You breathe slowly. The chamber smells of myrrh and old prayers. Suddenly Dash shouts. Drums. A priest bursts in, wearing the mask of Amit, devourer of souls. He lunges at you, snarling. You remain still. He retreats. It's part of the rite, the trial of the heart. Your Katha soul self is judged for its weight. Are you light as Mat's feather, or heavy with wrongdoing? It's theater, yes, but also a confession. And tonight, your heart doesn't feel light. You think of the scribes who feared you, the priest whose shrine you had dismantled because his statue looked smug, the worker who died last week during pyramid construction. You approved the timeline. You gave the order. What weighs more, his life, or the grain store it paid for? You close your eyes. A priest places a golden ankh on your chest. Another touches your lips with a reed soaked in honey and ink. The voice returns, they say. The name is remembered. Pharaoh is not lost. Then silence. Your cue. You sit up slowly, blinking in the dark. The priest's flutes begin to play soft, tentative, like sunlight dripping into shadow. You stand, alive again. God. Again. You exit the chamber. The inner courtyard is aglow with hundreds of oil lamps. The priests kneel. The dancers sway. Your people watch from behind veils and columns, murmuring blessings and relief. You walk across the courtyard slowly, head high, every step echoing like thunder from the tomb. A priestess approaches with a basin of sacred Nile water. You dip your hands, you wipe your face. You are reborn. Your queen joins you. She touches your elbow gently. You died well. You smirked. It's the little things. You eat your first meal of rebirth: flatbread, figs, and a cup of beer. It tastes better than any royal feast. Hunger sharpened by symbolism, by survival. You sit in the outer hall with your priests and scribes. You are to be consulted now, not as a ruler, but as one who has walked beyond the veil. They ask, what did you see? You lean back. You think. And then, with all the mystery of a god who knows how to keep his power, you say, I saw balance. I saw the scales hold. They nod, scribble, murmur affirmations. You don't tell them about the guilt. You don't tell them about the flash of the worker's face in the darkness. You just sip your beer, because pharaohs never confess. You rise before dawn and walk to the palace roof. The sky is lavender. The Nile glimmers like melted silver. Birds begin to sing. You stand there, barefoot, arms folded, alive, and once again, untouchable. It's a bright, humming morning in the palace when the royal physician tells you very gently that your molar is infected. You blink at him. He repeats it, this time using more delicate phrasing. There is pressure in the lower left cavity. He avoids saying the word pus, but you hear it anyway, loudly. Inside your skull, you press a hand to your jaw. Yes, it has been throbbing. Yes, you have been chewing on the other side. No, you have not been sleeping well. You are Pharaoh. After all, people expect you to command the sun and still be charming with a toothache. He bows. We can attempt an extraction, or there are ointments, prayers, maybe even leeches. You raise an eyebrow. For my tooth, he nods solemnly. They balance the humors. You resist the urge to groan. You wave him away and retreat to your personal chamber, where two attendants are already grinding medicinal herbs into a paste that smells like garlic, clay, and whatever sadness feels like when rubbed on gums. You sit in silence, letting one of them apply it. Your mouth numbs, then tingles, then burns. You blink tears as the mixture seeps into the angry crevices of your jaw. A servant fans you delicately, while the other prepares a soothing tea, made from boiled date pits, fennel, and crushed beetles. You pass on the tea. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Egyptian dentistry was surprisingly advanced for the time. Dentists used copper tools, string, and poultices made from honey, myrrh, and ground herbs. But they couldn't do much for infections. Many mummies, even royal ones, show worn teeth, abscesses, and broken molars. Pharaohs died with power, but often without molars. You walk slowly through the palace, jaw aching, tongue swollen. You try to look composed, but every step jostles your head and sends a fresh jolt up your temple. A priest bows deeply and asks if he should recite a healing hymn. No, you mumble, just keep the noise soft. You're scheduled to appear in court today. Naturally, you sit on your throne, back straight, head high, trying not to grimace. Nobles present petitions. Farmers request tax relief. One merchant offers you a carved wooden duck with glowing praise and a suspiciously detailed trade proposal. You nod through all of it. Your tooth pounds like a ceremonial drum. The vizier leans over. Shall I cancel the afternoon audience? You shake your head. No, just move faster. The vizier claps once. A young man rushes in with a scroll of jokes. Yes, this is real. Sometimes. The court employs divine jesters who recite humorous fables and riddles to entertain the pharaoh and lighten the mood during sessions. The boy stands nervously, clears his throat, and begins. A donkey, a goose, and a scribe walk into a grain store. You raise a hand. Stop, he bows. He leaves. You're trying to be regal, but your face is betraying you. By noon you retreat again. In your private garden you chew on mint leaves and gently press cool cloths to your cheek. A priest appears, holding a statue of Thoth. He claims it's blessed. You accept it. Anything helps. Your queen joins you, carrying a small carved box. What's in it? You ask, speaking through clenched teeth. Not leeches, she says. She opens it. Inside, a tiny tooth carved from ivory, a charm of protection, to fool the spirits, she says. If they think you've already lost a tooth, maybe they'll leave the real one alone. You stare at her. That's not how teeth work. You say it's how spirits work. She replies. You keep the charm. You even tuck it under your pillow that night. The next morning, the swelling is worse. The physician is called again. He examines you with a thin reed tool and the worried look of someone trying not to say gangrene. We must remove it, he says. Today, you hate this. You really hate this. They prepare the tools. Bronze forceps, a wax cone of calming incense, and a small wooden dowel for you to bite down on. Irony. You're seated upright in a low stool. For attendants hold your shoulders. A priest begins humming. The queen stands nearby, holding your hand. You squeeze it once, tightly, and then the pain. White hot. Blinding. The crunch of bone. The sting of nerves. The coppery taste of blood. It's over in seconds, but it echoes for hours. They hand you the tooth. You stare at it. So small, so full of betrayal. You laugh. Once. Your queen wipes your face and says nothing. Later, lying on your couch, one cheek puffed like a melon, you think about mortality. Not the grand kind. Not wars, or legacy, or pyramid tombs. Just this cut teeth, infected flesh, weak joints, and the daily mutiny of a body dressed like a god, but built like a man. You look out the window. The sky is gold. The wind is soft. Your jaw still hurts, but you're alive, and for now, that's enough. There's a low murmur outside your chamber, the kind that only means one thing. It's barbershop time, which in theory should be relaxing. In practice, it's an ancient Egyptian battlefield where your scalp, pride, and blood pressure hang. In the balance, you sit reluctantly on a woven stool in the palace's grooming chamber, which is equal parts perfume studio, surgical theater, and high-stakes gossip hub. 3 attendants bustle around you with towels, bowls of water, and an impressive array of blades, some so sharp they look more like surgical instruments than tools of self-care. Will it be the full grooming, Your Majesty? One asks, hands trembling slightly as he holds the razor dot. You nod. There's no escaping it. The full grooming, of course, includes shaving your entire head, massaging scented oils into your skin, trimming your eyebrows, cleaning your ears, and perfuming you until your enemies can smell your divine scent before they see your soldiers. You close your eyes, you breathe, then the scraping begins. A bronze blade against your scalp makes a sound not unlike dry papyrus being torn slowly in half. It's gentle at first, but you feel every nerve light up like a startled crocodile. One slip, and you go from living god to visible scar. This part, says the lead groomer, clears the negative energy. You grunt. This part, he says again, shaving around your temple, opens the divine channels. Try not to open an artery while you're at it. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Egyptians placed enormous importance on cleanliness, not just for hygiene but for spiritual clarity. Priests shaved their entire bodies every 3 days to remain pure. Pharaohs, meanwhile, maintained a strict grooming regimen to reflect their divine perfection, and to keep lice from turning their crowns into small festivals of itching. Once the head shaving is done, a warm cloth is pressed to your scalp. The heat seeps in. For a moment, it's actually nice. Then comes the beard, a fake one. The ceremonial beard is made of braided goat hair, stiffened with beeswax and dyed black. It's tied to your chin with thin gold threads that somehow always itch. You hated it as a child, you still hate it now, but it's tradition, and nothing says living god like a facial wig made from livestock as they secure it. Your arms are being oiled with almond and frankincense, your neck dabbed with sacred myrrh. A small reed brush is used to dust your collarbone with fine white powder symbolizing lunar purity. You're beginning to smell like someone who's been hugged by every herb in the kingdom. The final touch is the eye makeup. Two attendants lean in, each holding a tiny bronze spatula dipped in black coal. They smear the thick pigment along your lash lines with practiced precision, muttering prayers to Wadjet, the cobra goddess of protection. Your eyes water. There, one says, you are reborn. You glance into the mirror. You look terrifying in a good way. You also look exhausted. The coal hides it a little, but not completely. Then your queen enters. She circles you slowly, inspecting the results, like a sculptor evaluating her favorite statue. Sharp, she says. You smirk. That's the razors. She runs a finger down the back of your head, smooth as Ra's belly. You raise an eyebrow. You've seen Ra's belly, only in dreams. He needs more sun. A servant appears at the door. My pharaoh, your audience awaits. Of course they do. You rise. Your scalp tingles in the breeze. Your beard itches. Your collar smells like a spice market in heat stroke. But you look flawless, divine, frightening, ready. You stride into the outer court. Everyone bows. Some whisper. You see your reflection in the polished floor tiles as you pass. A god in motion. But even gods know the truth. That behind the oils, the coal, the gilded robes, is a man who just survived having his head shaved by a nervous 19-year-old with a shaking hand, and that, in itself, is worthy of worship. The sun is high, the crowd is gathered, and you Pharaoh, son of Ra, lord of the crowns, are holding a ceremonial mace with a human face carved into the handle. This means one thing: it's time to smite someone. Not literally. Probably you stand on a raised platform outside the palace, beneath a painted canopy flapping lazily in the heat. Behind you, your advisors look serious. In front of you, the air is filled with the rhythmic beat of drums and the sound of sandals scuffing the packed earth as royal guards parade in formation. Today is the Festival of Smiting. That's its actual name. Ancient tradition. Once a year, pharaohs must publicly demonstrate their divine authority to defeat enemies both foreign and domestic, real or metaphorical, by reenacting the smiting of foes. It's pageantry, it's ritual, it's slightly uncomfortable, especially when your mace hand is still sore from last week's tooth extraction. You step forward, lifting the heavy weapon. Before you kneels a prisoner, or rather, a symbolic prisoner, man dressed in foreign garb, head bowed, arms tied. He's probably a palace guard playing a role. The paint on his face is too neat, the fear in his eyes too performative. A priest calls out the invocation. Great One, you are the lion. You are the storm. You are the one who strikes chaos from the world. The crowd echoes with a thunderous chant. Smite the enemy. Smite the enemy. You sigh inwardly and raise the mace. Fringe. Tidbit. Ancient Egyptian art frequently depicted pharaohs smiting enemies, arm raised, foreigner beneath them, crown gleaming. This iconic pose was less about literal violence and more a political theater, order triumphing over chaos. The enemies represented disorder, rebellion, and drought, the Egyptian forces the pharaoh must conquer. Over and over again, you bring the mace down, gently. It taps the prisoner's shoulder with a ceremonial thunk. He slumps over dramatically. A chorus of priests erupt into praise. Trumpets blare. A scribe somewhere is already sketching you as a muscular giant defeating 10 men at once. You step back, hand the mace to an attendant, and accept a garland of lotus and acacia. The scent is sweet. The sweat running down your spine is not. The ritual continues. Now comes the recitation of victories. A procession begins, each group carrying effigies of conquered enemies, carved wooden heads, painted shields, scrolls bearing lists of names you don't recognize, but are expected to glare at anyway. You nod solemnly at each one, internally counting, how many more before lunch? Halfway through, one of the palace cats wanders into the procession. She stops in front of a scribe, glares up at him, then begins grooming herself. The crowd erupts into laughter. You smirk, even during rituals of absolute power. Cats still win. As the ceremony winds down, the high priest approaches with a painted ostrich feather, the symbol of Marot, cosmic balance. He places it at your feet. You have restored harmony. He says, you want to correct him. No, I waved a mace at an actor and frowned at a scroll. But you let it stand. Restoring harmony is exhausting. After the ceremony, you're expected to visit the Wall of Triumph, a huge stone surface where each pharaoh has added their official smiting scene. Yours is still being carved. Workers chisel your likeness into the granite, capturing your divine posture and carefully overemphasizing your biceps. You stop to inspect their progress. It's ambitious. Make my jawline less angular. You mutter, I look like a hungry bird. The chief carver bows. As you wish, great one. You're offered a chisel. Tradition dictates that you strike the first blow to the image of the enemy. You take it. You chip the stone once. It vibrates up your wrist and makes your recently shaved scalp itch. But the crowd cheers. Another symbol recorded. Another reminder etched in rock. Another year's performance complete. You return to the palace, muscles aching, stomach growling. The festival feast awaits. You sit under a canopy of palm fronds, watching dancers and listening to flutes. A plate of honey-roasted duck, lentils, and fig cakes is set before you. A goblet of pomegranate wine is placed in your hand. You chew slowly. You smile faintly. You've smitten well. But as the music swirls and servants pass like silent shadows, you wonder what happens when the smiting isn't a ceremony. What happens when the enemy isn't symbolic? You drink your wine, you look at the stars just beginning to emerge, and you remember, even a god needs to rest after battle, even if the battle was mostly decorative. You awaken in the dark, not the comforting, incense-scented twilight of your chamber. This is different, the kind of darkness that sticks to your skin, that carries a smell. Damp linen, old wood, something faintly metallic. You're in your tomb. Well, not your tomb, not yet. You've come to inspect it. It's customary for pharaohs to begin their burial complex long before their death, practical, if morbid. But tonight's visit isn't ceremonial. It's strategic. Rumors have reached your ears. Whispers of unfinished corridors, incorrect hieroglyphs, lazy craftsmanship. You don't mind dying eventually, but you do mind being buried in a crooked hallway with misspelled magic. You walk by flickering torchlight, the flames casting your shadow on freshly plastered walls. The air is cool, still, and heavy with stone dust. Your chief tomb architect walks ahead, holding a scroll and mumbling measurements to himself. We're nearing the false passage. Divine one, he says, wiping sweat from his neck. Yes, the decoy. You reach it, a beautifully carved dead-end corridor designed to confuse grave robbers. The floor is sloped, the walls covered with fake burial inscriptions. Anyone who gets this far will think they've found your tomb. They haven't. You press your palm to one of the wall stones. It clicks, ever so slightly, and a thin panel swings open. Beyond it, silence, and the real tomb. Fringe tidbit. Egyptian royal tombs were elaborate puzzles. They often included multiple corridors, decoys, collapsible walls, cursed inscriptions, and sometimes even decoy mummies. Historians still argue whether these methods ever stopped tomb robbers, or if the effort was just symbolic, a last attempt to protect the body and name in a world that rarely respected boundaries. You move deeper. The walls here are different, smoother, less colorful, still unfinished. Scribes have sketched out the scenes in red ochre guides for the painters and carvers to follow. You see yourself in outline, standing before Osiris, holding a crook and flail, receiving the ankh. One of the apprentices is asleep in the corner. He jerks awake when you pass. The look on his face is what you'd expect from someone seeing a walking ghost. You nod at him. Carry on. He faints. You step into the central burial chamber. Your sarcophagus is here, massive, red granite, freshly carved. The lid still rests beside it, unfinished. You walk around it slowly. The hieroglyphs glow softly in the torchlight. Your name, your titles, your deeds. Your voice. You pause. One line is wrong. Very wrong. You lean in. My name is misspelled. The architect freezes. You hear his stylus clatter to the floor. You read it aloud. The mistake is subtle, but damning, an omission of a determinative glyph. It turns your name from divine son of Ra to something closer to he who farts in judgment. You stare at the stone. You inhale slowly. Fix it. You say immediately. Great one. The architect croaks. You continue your inspection. The walls of the tomb are filled with sacred scenes. Your journey through the underworld. Battles with serpents. The weighing of your heart. Each image is designed not to decorate, but to guide, to help you navigate the duat and reach the field of reeds. One mural stands out. You, on a solar bark, surrounded by gods, but something's missing. You point. Where is Matt? The artist stammers. She was delayed. You nod slowly. At her. With the feather. Without her, I don't reach the gates. He bows so low his nose nearly hits the floor. You step into the antechamber. This is where your treasures will be placed. Golden beds, alabaster jars, perfumes, weapons, board games, and at least 2 chariots, one functional, one for showing off. You're told there are already plans for a chest filled with your favorite sandals, and another with tiny statues of every servant you've ever employed. You asked for that one yourself. If you're going to the afterlife, you want your foot rubs to continue. You glance up at the ceiling, a dark blue canvas with stars painted in white and gold, shimmering like the real sky. You raise a hand toward it, just slightly. You wonder, in a quiet moment, what it will feel like when you're placed here. Not for inspection, but forever. Your voice, your image, your name, all locked behind stone and curses and hope. Will it matter? Will someone still care? You head back through the passageways, past the decoys, past the sleeping apprentice, now snoring gently, past the line of guards pretending not to be deeply freaked out by your surprise midnight visit to your own future. Death chamber. Outside, the moon hangs low and full. You take a long breath. Seal it, you say, until next inspection. As you return to the palace, a breeze picks up. The scent of acacia blossoms fills the air, and you think, not for the first time, that sometimes being immortal is a very lonely job. The tomb may be sealed for now, but you can't rest. Not when the afterlife has administrative issues. You're seated in your private hall, a low-ceilinged chamber lined with papyrus scrolls, where the scent of ink, sandalwood, and just a whiff of burnt toast, someone messed up the incense again, lingers in the air. Before you is a growing pile of reports, each detailing some new drama in your so-called eternal plans. First on the docket, tomb robbers. It. Single quotes as not your tomb yet, but someone broke into a nobleman's burial chamber last week, left nothing behind but smashed jars and muddy footprints. The priests are in a frenzy, the workers are whispering, and the guards quietly suggesting revisions to burial protocols, which you know is code for "we really need more traps." You raise your eyebrow as the high priest speaks. "My pharaoh, the underworld is not secure." You reply dryly, "It's almost like we buried our gold with the instructions on where to find it." He doesn't laugh. Fringe tidbit. Tomb raiding wasn't just a crime, it was a spiritual offense. Disturbing the dead wasn't seen as mere theft, but an act that risked severing a soul from its afterlife path. And yet, it happened constantly. Even priests, guards, and artisans were sometimes involved in organized heists. Death might be sacred, but gold speaks louder. You begin issuing new orders, false corridors, decoy statues, more curses carved in bold, intimidating hieroglyphs. You even approve the use of crushed glass mixed into floor tiles sharp enough to deter barefoot looters. Next comes the issue of magical security. Your personal priest of funerary spells delivers a concerning report. Someone has begun repurposing parts of your funerary texts, your carefully written spells meant to guide your soul into the afterlife. Portions have been copied and sold to other people. Explain, you say slowly. They admire the phrasing, he mutters. They think your version of the Field of Reeds sounds more luxurious. You pinch the bridge of your nose. This is the underworld equivalent of identity theft. If too many people die using your spells, you could end up stuck in a queue in the Duat, behind 4 farmers and a goat herder who borrowed your map. You sigh. Am I still alive? Yes, my Pharaoh. Then tell them to write their own spells. He bows and shuffles out, looking both ashamed and oddly flattered. You're not finished. A scribe approaches, arms full of scrolls. Here are the latest petitions, he says. Some suggest you've already died and been replaced by a double. You stare at him. He shrinks a little. They think the real you wouldn't limp during processions. You flex your still healing foot. The real me has plantar fasciitis. He bows and retreats. Now you're irritated. You rise and pace, because even with tomb walls, spells, and backup mummies, you're realizing something unpleasant. You can't control what happens after you die. Not completely. You can plan. You can inscribe your name on 1,000 monuments. You can build pyramids, temples, lakes, and roads. But you can't stop time. Not really. And time eats everything. Names, legacies, kings. You stop beside a half-carved statue of yourself. Its eyes are unfinished, blank, staring, like they're waiting for you to decide who you'll be. You whisper, remember me. Just once. No one hears, except, perhaps, the cat who watches you from the windowsill. You still haven't figured out how she keeps getting in. A servant appears with evening tea, date leaf and ginger. You wave him away. Instead, you step into your personal shrine. It's quiet here, peaceful, lit with flickering lamplight and lined with small statues of gods Anubis, Isis, Horus. In the center stands a single obsidian obelisk, carved with your throne name. No decoration, just words. You chose it yourself. Because when the art fades, words might remain. You kneel. You close your eyes. You don't ask for immortality. You ask to be remembered right. And if that's too much, you ask to be misremembered beautifully. Breath in, a breath out. Outside, the night deepens. Somewhere far across the river, someone's lighting a torch. It glows. It flickers. It flickers. It burns for you, whether you want it to or not. You're standing in a hallway made of silence, not metaphorical silence, real thick, humming silence, the kind that fills your ears like water, the kind that means secrets. This is the Hall of Names. You don't bring anyone here. It's deep. Beneath the palace, past 3 locked doors, a staircase, and a hallway that pretends to end but doesn't. The guards posted outside think it's for scroll storage. It isn't. It's where you store names. Your names, carved into black basalt walls, are hundreds of them each. A title you've taken, earned, inherited, or invented. Each one a shape of power. You walk slowly, fingers brushing over the stone. Son of Ra, Lord of the 2 lands, Bull of Might, Golden Falcon, Voice of the Horizon, Breaker of Enemies, Friend of the Nile, Ra's Breath, Eternal Flame, He who commands the lotus. Some are true. Some are lies you're told. So often the stone started to believe them. And still, new names are always offered. Just this morning, your high priest came forward during a sun ritual with a fresh one. He who walks through the crops, without casting shadow. You raised an eyebrow. Bit much. He nodded solemnly, but majestic. Fringe tidbit. Pharaohs often had 5 great names, each tied to a specific role. Birth name, throne name, divine name, protector of Upper and Lower Egypt, and personal god name. But that didn't stop them from collecting more. Names meant permanence. Names meant story. Names meant you existed. You pause before a blank section of wall. This is where you'll inscribe your final name, the name for death, the one meant to echo beyond time. You haven't chosen it yet. It's delicate. Too humble, and no one remembers. You. Too proud, and they remember you wrong. You whisper a few test phrases. watcher of the horizon, last light before dawn, king who remembered the little things, builder of rest. None feel quite right. You sigh and move on. In the next chamber, your name archivists wait. These are the real keepers of your history, not generals, not priests, not even your heirs, just for soft-spoken scribes and one wide-eyed girl who hasn't blinked since you entered. They bow. The lead archivist, an older man who smells of ink and quiet rebellion, unfurls a scroll. These are the names the people have been using. Majesty. You lean closer. There, written in neat hieratic script, are the unofficial titles whispered through the kingdom. Pharaoh who gave extra bread. Storm voice, he with the beautiful ankles, that one who hates geese. Smiling lion, biting cat, you blink. Ankles. The scribe shrugs. The people notice things. You laugh. For a moment, you imagine all your statues replaced with you, bare-legged, offering bread and swatting birds. Not the worst. Legacy. You tap one of the names. This one. Storm voice. That's not bad. The girl speaks for the first time. They say your orders roll over the fields like thunder. You nod slowly. It's dramatic. It's vague. It'll age well. The archivist asks gently, shall we record it in the sacred list? You hesitate, because this is how it happens. How you lose control. One name becomes 10, becomes myth, becomes something else entirely. One day, some boy will hear your name and imagine you as a giant with wings and eyes of flame. Not a man who once cried over a dead cat. You say, not yet. He nods. Outside, the wind picks up, the door to the hall creaks. A papyrus scroll slips from the archivist's table and flutters to your feet. You bend carefully, pick it up. It's old. Really old. And it bears a name you haven't heard in years. A childhood name. You hold it in your hands for a moment. You see the boy you were, curious, clever, scared of deep water, always trying to outrun your shadow. You smile faintly. You say his name out loud. It echoes in the quiet, like a forgotten song. Then you hand it back. Archive that one too. You say, just don't carve it yet. Of course, they whisper. You leave the hall of names, with a strange ache in your chest, because you are made of titles, but you were born with just one. And someday, if the stone is kind, that will be enough. Today is the day of judgment, not your judgment at least, not yet, but someone else's. You walk into the hall of petitions with your usual entourage, viziers, guards, and a very flustered scribe carrying a tray of goose-feather pens and sweating, like a man whose sandals are too tight. The room is packed. Every petitioner kneels or bows as you enter. You offer the barest nod and take your place on the judgment seat, an elevated alabaster throne with gold inlay that creaks more than you'd like. You adjust your posture. You're here to play God. Literally. A woman steps forward, middle-aged, draped in homespun linen, eyes fierce. She accuses her neighbor of stealing grain during last month's flood. Her voice trembles, but her chin doesn't. Her thin man with suspiciously smooth hands for a farmer claims it was accidental borrowing. You sigh. This is the 7th grain dispute this week, but every decision you make now, it doesn't just solve a problem. It gets written down, passed around, whispered into children's ears like bedtime stories. Every act of justice becomes a parable. Fringe tidbit. Pharaohs were considered the literal embodiment of mat, order, truth, balance. Their judgments were thought to ripple through the cosmos, stabilizing not just the kingdom but the universe itself. Historians still argue whether these sessions were symbolic or genuinely binding. Either way, you couldn't afford to be wrong. You glance at the accused. Then at his sandals. Then at the way he avoids your gaze. I sentence you, you say slowly, to return double the grain or work in the temple granary for 7 days. Gasps ripple through the crowd, not because it's harsh, because it's clever. A scribe nods in approval. Let it be written. Pharaoh sees truth beyond dust. You suppress a smirk. You hear the whispers already. Next up, a soldier who wants to retire, citing sacred visions and persistent knee pain. He's 30. You grant the request, but assign him to temple guard duty instead. Quiet, symbolic, boring. He bows so low you worry his sacred knees might buckle. You notice something today. How people look at you, not with fear, not with love, exactly. With faith. They believe your words shape reality. You test this. A child is brought forward, an orphan found near the docks, clutching a reed doll and refusing to speak. No family. No name. You step down from the throne. The hall gasps. You kneel beside the boy. You ask his name. He whispers, "No one." You say, "Then I give you one." You pause. You choose something soft, gentle, from a memory of someone you used to know. Long ago, your name, you say, is Kemi. You belong to the Temple of Thoth now. They will teach you letters. When you learn to write, come back and tell me your new story. The boy stares at you. Don't slowly, he smiles. You return to your seat and realize this is the most dangerous power you hold. Not armies, not gold, not monuments, but this. The power to name, to define, to shape someone else's fate with your voice. The hall continues. One by one, problems are brought. You listen. You answer. You see the way people lean in when you speak, as if your words really do weigh more than stone. And maybe they do. Because when you say peace, people breathe easier. And when you say justice, even the liars pretend to be innocent. Near the end of the day, your queen appears. She watches from the shadows, then steps forward herself. "I have a petition," she says, a sly smile playing on her lips. You raise an eyebrow. "Oh, I ask," she says, "that you take the evening off." Laughter echoes through the room. You glance at the line of still waiting petitioners. Their faces are tired. So is yours. You nod. Petition granted. As you rise, people bow. Scribes scramble to write everything down. Priests murmur blessings. You're not just a king, you're a walking verdict. A breathing balance beam between chaos and order. And as you leave the hall, you wonder, what judgment will you face someday when it's your heart on the scale? Will the gods be as kind as you were today? You hope so. You really do. The Nile is swollen tonight. Not dangerously so, just enough to lap higher on the banks, shimmering in moonlight like a great silver serpent coiled through the heart of your kingdom. You watch from the palace balcony, the cool stone beneath your elbows, the wind tugging at your robe like a curious child. Tonight is Hepset, the said festival. Your said festival. The one meant to prove you're still strong enough to rule. You're not young anymore. You've ruled longer than most pharaohs, longer than anyone predicted. And now, by custom and superstition alike, the court demands reassurance. Not words. Proof. You'll give it to them. But first, the stretching in your private chamber. 2 attendants help. Wrap your knees and massage your joints with warm oil. The queen peers around the curtain. You look worried. She says, "I look old." You look like Pharaoh. That shuts you up. You put on the ceremonial kilt, the stiff, pleated kind that only makes sense when you're in motion. Over your chest, a broad collar of lapis and turquoise. Your crown today is the white hedget, symbol of Upper Egypt. Heavy, sacred, slightly off balance. You hate it, but it looks good. Outside, the court gathers. Priests form ranks. Musicians begin playing the sacred rhythm. A scribe reads aloud, your titles, all of them. It takes 15 minutes. Then comes the race. Yes, a race. Fringe tidbit. The said festival was one of the oldest royal rituals in Egypt, held after 30 years of rule. Then every 3 years after that, its centerpiece. The pharaoh had to run, in front of everyone, around a sacred court, often 4 times, to prove physical vigor and divine fitness. And yes, it was taken seriously. He stepped to the starting line, heart pounding. The crowd holds its breath. You begin. Your sandals hit the packed earth. The hem of your kilt flutters. Every muscle tightens with the memory of youth. Your arms swing. You breathe not like a ruler, but like a runner. You run. Past pillars, past statues, past priests shouting your name. The crowd begins to cheer, louder with each lap. Your chest aches. Your knee clicks. You don't stop, because this isn't about fitness, it's about faith. You finish the last lap with a final burst of speed, chest heaving, sweat running down your temples. You raise both arms. The crowd erupts. You wobble a bit. Someone catches your elbow. You pretend it's part of the show. Later, seated on a high platform surrounded by torches and incense, you receive the next part of the ritual, the recoronation, as if you were born anew. A priest ties a sash around your waist. Another blesses your feet. You are declared pharaoh once more, as if you ever stopped. The queen joins you. She whispers, "You almost look like a young god again." You smirk, almost. She shrugs. "Let's not overdo it." You laugh. The feasting begins. Tables groan with roasted duck, lotus-stuffed bread, dates dipped in honey, and pomegranate wine. Jugglers perform. Dancers swirl like petals in a storm. Children laugh beneath hanging lanterns, shaped like sacred beetles. You sip your wine, bones still humming. Then a boy steps forward with a clay tablet. "Your Majesty," he says, "I've written a song." He clears his throat and sings softly, nervously. It's a strange little melody, barely holding together, about a pharaoh who ran with stars on his shoulders and wind in his sandals. It ends with ... and he never once looked behind him. The court applauds. You nod, but you do look behind briefly, at all the things you've outrun: doubt, fear, age, even time itself. For now you survived another judgment, another test. You are Pharaoh, still, always, for one more year. At least, you wake with the sunrise, slicing gold across your chamber wall. It's a new day, but your back reminds you that yesterday was very much a sad festival day. Your knees creak, your shoulders feel like they've been trampled by a sacred ox, probably the one that refused to move during last night's blessing ceremony. You sit up slowly, wrap yourself in linen, and ignore your body's complaints. There's a new problem. The high priest of Ammon is waiting, which is never a casual drop-dash-in. He bows so low it looks like prayer. "Your Majesty," he begins, voice syrupy. "The temple has concerns." You exhale. "Of course it does." He straightens. "It is about your presence, or lack thereof. At last week's procession, the people whisper, do they say the gods wonder if Pharaoh still honors them?" You blink. "I ran a sacred race for Matt 2 days ago, and Amen," he says delicately, "does not jog." This again. Fringed tidbit. The high priests of Ammon grew so powerful during the New Kingdom that they rivaled pharaohs in wealth and influence. Some historians even believe they subtly controlled royal decisions, argue the pharaohs tolerated them only until their patience ran out. But one thing's clear: divine politics was anything but divine. You rise slowly, with the temple like a donation. The priest bows again. The gods never refuse generosity. You nod. "I'll send them a golden altar and 3 goats, but they'd better be grateful goats." He doesn't laugh. You don't expect him to. Later, during your midday meal, fresh figs, lentils, and a disappointingly overcooked quail, you find yourself surrounded not by advisors or soldiers, but priests, not just from Amon's temple, from Bastet, Pata, Thoth, and even that awkwardly intense cult of Sobek, the crocodile god. Each has a request. Each wants land, statues, festivals, priesthood, privileges. You choose slowly, you listen, you say very little, because you've learned something. The gods want a pharaoh who is divine, but never more divine than them. So you begin to play the game. You grant one temple a new obelisk stymie, symbolic. You deny another's request for exclusive rights to thunder, on account of it being ridiculous. To the crocodile cult. You offer a sacred canal. To the temple of Bastet. You send rare incense and 6 kittens. They send back a hymn praising your whiskered grace. You're still not sure if it's sarcasm. By sunset, your scribes are exhausted, your viziers grumpy, and the gods, at least for today, appeased. You walk alone in the evening light, past your private garden, into the shrine of Ra. It's quiet. Here no priests. No petitions, just a statue of the sun god, standing tall and proud, eyes staring into eternity. You bow your head, not out of fear, out of familiarity, because you get Ra. He's tired. He burns all day, fights serpents at night, and still has to rise again tomorrow, no matter what. You whisper you ever want to just stay under the horizon for a day. The statue doesn't answer, but it feels like it's listening. You sit on the cool floor, back against the wall. For a moment, you are not Pharaoh. You're just someone who got old, who got smart, who got caught between gods and ghosts, and the weight of being eternal. You close your eyes. The wind rustles the reeds outside. You hear birds settling into sleep, and faintly, the purring of one of those kittens from Bastet's temple curled near the altar. Ignoring all your titles, you smile, because tonight, you won. Not by ruling. Not by racing. Not even by smiting, but by negotiating divinity, and that's harder than anything your ancestors did with spears. Some nights, when the palace grows too quiet and your titles feel too heavy, you wander, not like a ghost, like a man who can't sleep. Tonight, your feet take you beyond the perfumed halls and painted columns, past the inner courtyards where the guards pretend not to notice your bare feet. You walk deeper, where the stone is colder and the murals fade into old soot and spiderwebs. You find yourself in the artisan's quarters. It smells of pigment and sweat, of wet plaster and fire. The workshops are mostly dark, save for one where a flickering oil lamp still burns. Inside, 2 apprentices are asleep, curled under a table. Their tools are scattered across the floor: chisels, bowls of ground ochre, a half-carved wooden figure of a baboon. On the far wall, someone's begun a mural. It, single quotes, S.U, or it will be. Your outline stands proud. Arms crossed, crown enormous, chin heroic, but there's something off. You step closer, your eyes in the drawing. They look uncertain, almost too human. Fringe tidbit. Ancient Egyptian artisans were instructed to idealize pharaohs in every depictions, serene, perfect, in form and face, yet subtle variations suggest that, behind closed doors, some artists slipped in human traits: fatigue, kindness, fear. Historians still argue whether this was rebellion or reverence. You sit on the edge of a workbench and stare at your almost face on the wall. It doesn't speak, but it asks who you really are when no one's carving you, and, more painfully, who will carve you when you're gone. A memory surfaces. You were 12, sneaking into the sculptor's gallery, hiding behind a basket of lime wash while your father examined a new statue of himself. You remember his voice: "Make my mouth closed. People talk too much already." You'd laughed, he'd looked your way. You'd run. And now you're the one they carve, over and over. In granite, in wood, in paint, in prayers, but none of those are you. Not really. You pick up a brush, just for a second, just to see how it feels. You dab a bit of ochre onto the figure's hand, nothing major, just a touch of warmth. Then you set the brush down and slip out into the night. By morning, that dot of paint will be gone, covered, corrected. But for now, you've left something of yourself behind. You walk the garden paths, your steps slow, thoughtful. The moon hangs like a suspended pearl over the palace roof. Somewhere, a musician softly plays a reed flute. The notes drift like breath. You wonder how you'll be remembered. Not in stone, not in hymns, but in the half-memories people pass on. He was the one who changed the taxes that year. Didn't he outlaw raw onions in the throne room? I heard he loved birds, but hated crocodiles. That's the real afterlife, isn't it? The little stories. The wrong details. The human moments. You pass a gardener asleep in the corner, curled beside a basket of lotus bulbs. You tuck your cloak around his shoulders before moving on. You pass a cat carrying a fish in her mouth. You nod to her. She doesn't nod back. You pass the queen's chamber. A light flickers within. You hesitate, then move on. This night is yours alone. You return to your chamber just as the horizon begins to pale. You sit on the edge of your bed. You take off your crown. You place it on the low stool beside you gently, carefully, like a sleeping child. You whisper, "Just rest for now." And then, finally, so do you. You awaken to drums. Low, slow, rhythmic. Not the joyful kind, the kind that means something's happened. The kind that summons the court. Your heart already knows. Before the steward breathes the words into your chamber: "My Pharaoh, your eldest son is dead." You don't speak. You don't move. The air itself holds still, as if waiting to see what kind of father the Pharaoh will be. Then your voice, quieter than it has ever been, asks, "How?" "A sudden fever," he says. The priests say, "Natural." The physicians could not. You raise a hand. "Enough." Later, in the temple, you stare down at the linen-wrapped body, small for a prince, just 15. He still had baby skin under the gold bracelets. You reach out. You touch his forehead. It's already cold. You're not crying. Not yet, but your lungs feel too large for your body. You say his name. Once, twice, a third time. You have to. Because every whisper keeps him from vanishing. Because the only thing worse than death is being forgotten. Fringe tidbit. Royal children in ancient Egypt weren't shielded from mortality. Plague, infection, and even palace intrigue claimed many young heirs. Pharaohs mourned, sometimes privately, sometimes publicly, but grief always collided with ritual. Historians still debate whether public mourning was sincere, performative, or both. You attend the rituals. You walk behind the boat that carries his body across the Nile, toward the Valley of the Kings. You allow the mourning wails, the ashes, the offerings. You allow priests to chant his soul forward. But inside, you want to scream. Because this boy knew how to make you laugh during boring ceremonies. Because he liked sneaking dates from the palace kitchens and swore he'd never wear the full crown because it looked itchy. Because he called you Pa when no one was listening. The burial is grand, but grief is small. Sharp it crawls into your bones, curls up, and waits. Afterward, the court is quieter than usual. Everyone walks a little slower, whispers a little softer. They ask no questions. They offer no comfort. They know this is not a king they can help. You visit his chambers once. The sandals are still near the bed. His favorite reed game still mid-play. You take a piece, pocket it. Leave. The next day, the viziers begin gently suggesting a new heir be named. You say, not yet. They glance at each other, lips pursed. Power hates a vacuum, but you hate rushing love. Instead, you focus on finishing his tomb, smaller than yours, but still beautiful. You add things you know he'd want: silly things, a model chariot with racing stripes, a tiny gold sculpture of his cat, a jar labeled royal snacks, filled with dried figs and honey. You instruct the painters to show him laughing in the field of reeds, not standing stiff in a pose, but laughing. Let the gods know who they're receiving. Let them meet the boy, not the title. One night, weeks later, you sit by your own tombs, plans, and whisper, make a space for him. Beside me. The architect nods, doesn't ask. You visit. The queen, she doesn't cry either. She just leans into you, and breathes, and breathes, and breathes. Together, you remember. Together, you let him live a little longer. In a look, in a word, in silence. Eventually, the drums stop. The halls grow louder. Life resumes, but you're not quite the same. There's a new weight in your voice, a new pause before your laughter. Because even pharaohs, especially pharaohs, aren't spared the price of love. And when the gods say give him back, you don't get to say no. You only get to whisper, take care of him, and keep walking. One foot, then another, into the next sunrise. The years pass like water through your hands. One by one, the rituals repeat. Planting, flooding, harvest, festivals, victories, arguments about tax grain and chariot wheels, and why the temple cats are stealing food again. You feel your body slow, not just in pain, but in pace like the sun, deciding not to climb so high today. You begin giving more orders from the couch. Your meals get softer. Your thoughts get sharper. You find yourself watching more than doing, watching how the queen speaks to the priests with elegance, never apology. How your youngest son walks with the same left foot drag you had as a child. How the guards blink when you catch them staring too long. They're wondering. When you know you've already prepared. Your tomb is complete. You've checked it more times than is strictly necessary. The misspelled name has been fixed. The statue of Matt is placed correctly. Now on your left, near the offering table. The spell scrolls are tucked inside the sarcophagus wall. You even added an extra false door for good measure. Just in case anyone gets clever. You still take council meetings, still sign decrees. But the truth, you're getting ready to go. You've started sorting through your own things. You keep only what matters. A fan made by your first wife. A tiny scarab your mother gave you. The reed game piece you took from your son's room. Everything else, let it turn to sand. You call your successor. You don't say, it's time. You say, watch how they talk when they think you're not listening. You say, mercy is a kind of armor. You say, don't build bigger statues, build better bread ovens. He nods. He's young, but you see the seed. You sleep more. You dream more. You start hearing old voices, your father's laughter, your son's mischief, even that high priest who tried to bribe the gods with 5 goats and a harp player. You find peace in it. You know your name will fade. Even stone wears smooth. But maybe, just maybe, someone will tell a story once in a while of the pharaoh who gave a child a name, of the one who raced with aching knees, of the king who laughed at his own statue and whispered to the gods like they were equals. You lie in bed one morning, unable to rise, that the queen sits beside you. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. You take her hand. She squeezes it once, then lets go. And just like that, you become a story, a statue, a whisper behind a curtain of gold and dust and centuries. But you were real. You lived. You loved. And even if no one remembers every title or temple, somewhere, somehow, a child will say, I heard he once ran like the wind. And someone else will smile and say, yes, that was Pharaoh. And now, let it all grow quiet. Let the drums fade. and the stone doors of the tomb close softly behind us. You've walked the full length of a life that once ruled from the Nile to the stars, felt the weight of gold on your brow, and the ache of grief behind your ribs. You've spoken with gods, and listened to cats. You've judged, danced, wept, and wandered. You've named, and been named. Now, nothing more needs doing. You've seen that even the eternal get tired, and that sometimes the most sacred act is to lie down and let the world turn without you. The torches burn low now, casting long shadows on walls lined with memories. The moonlight spills through a narrow slit of stone high above, just enough to silver the edge of your old sandals still dusty from that last festival. The crowd has gone home. The scribes have stopped writing. Even the river seems to slow. So rest. Rest, knowing that your story has been told, not as a god, or a monster, or a forgotten face in sand, but as someone real, someone complicated, someone unforgettable in ways no monument could hold. And if your name echoes, let it do so gently. Let it rustle like a reed. Let it linger like incense. Let it fade like a lullaby. Close your eyes, Pharaoh. Your kingdom sleeps beside you, and so should you.